The girl looks ahead with anxiety and irritation, realizing that the situation is getting out of control. She tiredly covers her face with her hand, mentally cursing this cruel world and wanting to burn everything to the ground. Against the backdrop of the somber ceremony, she introduces herself as Welody Elton, the Duke's eldest daughter, who always lived diligently and hard. Her memory flashes back to her mother's recent funeral, after which everything changed. She suddenly realizes that she has been reborn inside the novel, and this discovery illuminates her consciousness. Remembering the events of 16 years ago, she sees a reflection of the past in her eyes, when she was still a baby. The girl, looking at her mother's face, feels a strange sense of recognition and vague closeness. For several days she cries and refuses to eat, until she loses her voice, unable to accept the new reality. The mother, possessing great magical powers, casts a spirit spell on her to protect the child. A side effect of this spell is that all memories of the past life disappear. Until recently, she lived as Welody Elton, unaware of her true identity, until after her mother's death, the spell wore off, and her memory returned. She is confused, wondering if reincarnation is even possible, and trying to make sense of what is happening. A girl in a white dress stands in her room and reflects that her story is not at all like an ordinary reincarnation. She looks at her reflection, noting her black hair and ruby eyes, as well as her extraordinary beauty and tall stature. For 16 years, she considered herself an ordinary daughter, similar to her father, but now she begins to doubt it. Remembering the past, she realizes that in the original she was the eldest son. The novel's story tells of a little girl adopted by a ducal house and becoming the family's favorite, studying spirit magic. The family that adopted her turns out to be Elton's home, and although everything seems normal, the heroine realizes that there is one serious problem. The character she reincarnated into was the Duke's eldest son, Elton, known for his coldness and charisma. Despite his harsh character, this man was infinitely kind to the main character of the story. Everything happened the same as in the original, but only her gender was changed. She accepts her fate, deciding to continue living as Welody Elton. Remembering her past life, she realizes that she was the eldest daughter in a poor family, where only the youngest son was loved. Her parents constantly talked about the lack of money, and she had to live carefully. Even dreaming of pocket money was impossible. After entering college, the girl was left without parental support and was forced to work several part-time jobs, recalling the carefree moments of the past. Her parents promised to manage her salary once she found a job, but after graduation, she was unable to find a job right away and felt lonely and lost. Her family met her failures with coldness and reproach, demanding that she solve problems herself and not rely on her parents' help. Her mother irritably reproached her for her inability to be like others, advising her to simply find a rich husband instead of trying to earn money on her own. The girl decisively leaves the house, severing all ties with her family, despite accusations of coldness and selfishness. With tears in her eyes, she vows to no longer sacrifice herself for others and to live only for herself. The girl's eyes reflect the moment of the accident, when the car crashes into the fire, and a tear rolls down her cheek. A lifeless hand lies on the asphalt, and the thought of death as a result of an accident dawns on the mind. A girl with long dark hair, sitting in a luxurious room, reflects on the tragedy of her life, full of difficulties and struggles, which knew no satisfaction. She turns to the door, hearing footsteps, and allows entry. A maid enters the room, announcing that the Duke has summoned Lady Velady, and that Meldor has also been invited. The lady says that she needs to change and asks for her clothes to be prepared, to which the maid readily agrees. Against the backdrop of a sunny garden, a happy family walks together, and the story is told about a caring father who adopted the bright main character. The heroine's inner voice reflects on her role as a silent and unnoticed supporter of her younger sister, and she decides that she no longer wants to live like that. In a luxurious living room, a man with a cold gaze indicates his lateness as he greets a girl who enters. The young man with blue eyes ironically remarks that she is late because of her dress, reminding her of the importance of calling her father. The girl smiles reservedly, mentally irritated at her brother, and apologizes for being late. The man in the chair reminds that the official funeral ended yesterday, and now everyone must return to normal life. The father looks tired, and Meldor is depressed and watches what is happening with tension. The girl remembers how yesterday it seemed to her that the whole world had collapsed. The hero, reflecting on his past life, realizes that his love for his mother has faded, and his father decides to postpone Veladi's engagement. Meldor's father informs him that fencing lessons will resume, warning him that it will not be easy. Meldor agrees with a smile and expresses trust in his father. Left alone, Meldor plunges into sad thoughts, unable to find words for his feelings. The girl notes with restraint that it must be nice to live without worries and responsibilities, having fun all day long. She is surprised by her interlocutor's words, and he explains that her life is filled with games and that a profitable marriage awaits her in the future. The guy speaks with indignation about his hard training and sacrifices, thanks to which she lives in comfort. The girl irritably asks him to calm down, reminding him that they are right in front of her father's office. The guy, confused, tries to continue the conversation, but the girl leaves and he decides that first he needs to get out of here. The girl walks away down the corridor, followed by two maids, leaving behind the tense conversation. The girl clenches her fist in anger, not understanding why anyone should feel sorry for him, and the maids watch her reaction in fear. She orders the damage to the wall to be repaired, and the maids quickly agree to carry out her orders. In her mind, she remembers that her mother always felt sorry for Meldor because this guy had a special reason for sympathy. She realizes that Meldor should become the head of the family instead of her, since she was born a girl, and in the original story, he was the second Tsundere brother. The Elton ducal family is renowned for its swordsmanship and guards the northern lands of the Empire, and the current head of the family is Theodore Elton. In the original story, the heir was the eldest son, similar to the father, so there were no problems with succession. Meldor becomes the heir and is forced to study fencing instead of magic, which changes his destiny. The pressure of expectations and the discrepancy between his own abilities weigh heavily on the shoulders of young Meldor. The mother feels sorry for her son, and even the cold father sometimes shows concern for him. Finding myself on the sidelines, I again feel unnecessary in my own family and begin to live with caution, as in my past life. After the reincarnation in the novel, two things changed, such as her gender and consciousness. I saw my talent as a burden, because Meldor suffered from his inability to wield a sword, and I expected it to only bring pain. She decides not to make the situation worse, distances herself from the sword, and lives the way her parents want, naively accepting it. Inside, a question arises as to why she should feel guilty towards Meldor, because it seems terribly unfair. Everything that happened to her seemed unfortunate and unfair, and Meldor's treatment only got on her nerves even more. She believes that Meldor is confident that his father loves only him, and this explains his behavior. A determination to remove her father from the estate appears in her thoughts, because everything that should have been hers has already been taken from her. She can't sit back and watch Meldor rise higher and higher, so she decides to use the original plot to her advantage. She decides that the first thing she must do is hire the right person to help her implement her plan. With a sly smile and a firm determination, she vows to squeeze every last drop out of everyone. Geoffrey Vincent, kneeling before the Duke's eldest son, was his closest aide, but remained a minor hero. He was secretly connected to the Duke of Elton and managed the affairs of a secret organization while remaining in the shadows. He collected information about the Elton family, kept an eye on the servants, and quietly controlled what was happening. In addition, Geoffrey carried out secret missions such as eliminating traitors. In the original, such people were called Watchers, and Geoffrey was one of them. This truth was revealed only in the second half of the novel, so until recently, no one paid attention to it. Even if she had remembered about Geoffrey earlier, it would not have been easy to win him over to her side, since he became the right hand of his eldest son for a special reason. As soon as Geoffrey saw the heir's talent, he wanted to follow him and could not wait for him to come of age. He begged the Duke to allow him to become his eldest son's assistant earlier, and his father, trusting his successor, did not object. Now she is neither a son nor an heir, and has not even been trained as a future heir. She once studied with Meldor, but after his complaint, she was expelled, and this was the first time she went against her parents' will. Her mother persuaded her to give in to her younger brother, reminding her of seniority, and this decision became the beginning of changes. The hero is forced to give up his studies because he has no other choice, and after Meldor received all the knowledge, he began to behave insolently. The girl understands that despite her independent training, her opportunities are limited, so she decides to get Geoffrey in order to adopt his knowledge and skills. She realizes with cold determination that she can use even the observers who obey Geoffrey. The first thing she does is watch a young man practicing with a gun in the fresh air. The guy aims with concentration and takes a shot, trying to show off his skills. The bullet hits the target but not the center, and he curses in irritation at the miss. The guy throws the gun on the ground in irritation, not understanding why he can't hit the target. The girl raises her weapon with a slight smile, mentally reproaching Meldor for his carelessness. She reminds that even the gun's protective mechanism is enchanted and advises to handle the family heirloom with care. After examining the target, the girl notices that not a single shot reached the target and concludes that the shooter was unsuccessful. With ease and confidence, she picks up the gun, ready to demonstrate her skills. After an accurate shot, the girl proves that the weapon is fully functional, and the guy is amazed by her skill. The girl easily hits the center of the target, explaining that shooting is her secret hobby. The guy annoyedly demands more time for practice, and the girl ironically reminds him that for her, participating in the tournament is a normal thing. He stubbornly declares that he will definitely participate in the important imperial tournament for the heirs. The girl reflects with a cold smile that an heir without achievements can only be a laughingstock. The boy reacts indignantly to her words, and she reminds him that his sword training was interrupted due to his mother's funeral. The girl shoots accurately again, wondering if he has time for leisurely shooting practice. On a sunny lawn, a girl with a gun calmly explains to a young man that she cares about her father's reputation, although not only heirs can participate in the hunt. She takes aim with a slight smirk, thinking about how the heir shows off his disgusting skills at every tournament, and hopes that this year the family name will not be tarnished. The bullet hits the exact center of the target, leaving a clear mark in the red circle. The young man is stunned by her skill, and the girl confidently considers such shooting to be as easy as pie. He angrily declares that target practice is useless and allows her to do whatever she wants. The girl watches his anger and reflects that perhaps Meldor's lack of physical abilities is her luck. The girl takes aim with a confident smile, mentally advising Meldor to relax and stay home. Her eyes reflect determination, because now her older sister will take her place in the tournament. That same evening, it becomes known in the mansion that Meldor refused to participate in the tournament. 2 days later, the main character appears in the forest in a hunting suit, ready for the test. She rides across a sunny meadow with a young man on a white horse. Sion Aglar, the youngest son of the Aglar house, asks her with concern whether he should straighten her hat. The girl adjusts her hat with a smile and assures that everything will be fine as long as it doesn't fall off. A young man appears on a horse next to her, surprised by her presence on the hunt. He asks with a hint of mockery if her brother had thrown a tantrum, remembering him as a little tyrant, and introduces himself as Mostin Fredo, the eldest son of the Fredo house. The girl explains that her brother himself refused to go, and his hysterics often interfered with her shooting. Sion notices that his brother always came to the tournament through force, and suspects that the girl could have influenced his decision. She calmly replies that she merely reminded him of the impact his skills had on the family's reputation, and Meldor made his choice himself. 3 young men are riding horses along a forest path, and a girl mischievously remarks that she is glad to be there. One of the companions admits with a smile that he is glad to see her, while the other asks with concern whether her parents have forbidden her to participate in the tournament. The girl answers with restraint that her mother is no longer there, and there is sadness in her voice. She recalls how her mother didn't like it when she did anything rude or unladylike, so she had to train in secret. Now, without her mother's control, she no longer needs to be secretive. Unlike her friends, the girl feels that her father hardly pays attention to her, and this leaves a slight sadness in her soul. 2 days ago, the girl told her father about her desire to participate in the tournament, and he met this news without much enthusiasm. When she added that she wanted to see her childhood friends, her father only asked her not to disgrace the family. Only after this did he give his consent, remaining reserved and cold. While hunting, the girl meets a knight from the Elton house, who came to help them. She notes with satisfaction that all participants gathered as expected. At this time, the head of the family is interested in who of those present will be able to please him this year. The young man, smiling, assures them that everyone will make every effort for the sake of their majesty, and the man in the fur robe gratefully notes this. The girl watches the conversation and mentally notes that the young man has the same sharp tongue as his father and is not surprised by their political success. The young man smiles carefreely, as if not noticing the tension around him. A man in royal robes announces that everyone must return to the tents before the time runs out. The white glove raises a red flag, signaling the start of the action. The girl aims her gun with determination, preparing to fire. A shot bird lies on the grass, its feathers stained with blood. The servant collects the loot and notes another accurate hit. The girl with the gun reflects that 3 knights are following her and decides to leave only one. She orders one of the knights to dismount and help collect the spoils, leaving only one companion for herself. With a smile and excitement, she prepares to continue the hunt, turning to her companion. The dark-haired boy sheepishly confirms his willingness to follow her, slightly nervous. Those who serve the powerful are destined for a short life, and a young man with dark hair looks thoughtfully at his uniform in a dimly lit room. A man in a luxurious robe sits on a throne, dreaming of raising a genius with his own hands, and the glow of ambition surrounds him. Against a background of blooming roses, a profile of a young man appears, in which the features of Duke Theodore Elton can be discerned. Theodore, the Empire's unrivaled swordsman, demonstrates his skill in a duel, while a blue-haired youth watches in admiration. The boy with big blue eyes takes on the responsibility of cleaning Elton's house not only out of duty, but also because he feels the need to do so. Recently, he has become concerned about the heir named Meldor Elton, who is destined to lead the house. As Theodore's junior, the hero feels powerless and stands before crossed swords, aware of his secondary role. He understands that he will serve Meldor much longer than Theodore, because the heir's innate talent cannot be compared with the Duke's talent. Even if perseverance can compensate for his lack of ability, he dreams of growing a rough diamond that can rival Theodore. However, the young master did not like fencing from the very beginning, and at such moments the hero feels envy towards his father. Father confides in Theodore the secret about the observers, because he sees a real diamond in him, and the hero feels in the shadows. Sinking into depression because of this, he suddenly hears his brother's appeal, which brings him back to reality. The girl in the maid's uniform reproachfully and decisively declares that she is ready to take responsibility and become the head if necessary. The younger sister, working in the Duke's house, always supported the hero with encouraging words, which helped him make an important decision. He decides to hand over leadership to his sister until Meldor comes of age and leave the Duke's house. Remembering yesterday's promise, the hero realizes that his sister might faint if she heard his decision. A graceful deer, illuminated by the sun's rays, appears in the forest. The girl with the gun shoots accurately, and the deer falls to the grass, killed by the shot. The girl with the gun smiles, but feels her resolve quickly fading. On a forest path, she is on horseback discussing the results of the hunt with the knight, surprised that there was less prey than expected. The young man recalls that last year Meldor managed to catch only 2 rabbits and is surprised by her words. Velody Elton, the only noble daughter of the Empire and Theodore's child, remains a complete stranger to him. Theodore always asked Meldor to help him in tournaments, but only today did he assign him to look after Velody. The young man reluctantly accepts the new responsibility without much enthusiasm. The girl easily hits her target while hunting, surprising those around her with her skill. The young man notices that the knights are barely able to collect the game, while Velody finds and kills even those animals that he cannot see. He muses that she doesn't even have basic sword skills, but her senses are sharper than his own. Her innate abilities, physical strength, stamina, and endurance allow her to hunt without fatigue or problems. She was able to tame even the most unruly horse in the Duke's house with the strength of her left hand. The guy wonders if her technique would be similar to Theodore's style if she wielded a sword, since Theodore always starts a fight with a right strike. A young man on a horse ponders Velmady's habits, deciding that he might want to work with her when the girl approaches him with a question. Hearing the address, he asks again in surprise, not immediately understanding what it was about. Suddenly, their attention is drawn to a red fox lying on the ground in the sunlight. It comes to mind that the red fox is a rare target in a hunting tournament for which only 2 individuals are released. The young man applauds admiringly, noting Lady Velmady's impressive success. The girl notices that her interlocutor raised only one eyebrow, a gesture that always reveals his irritation. The young man is surprised to note that the girl really does look like him and begins to doubt whether she likes his reaction. The girl, with a slight smile, asks her interlocutor's opinion, waiting for his answer. She reminds him that he has been observing her hunting skills all this time and receives recognition of their perfection, comparable to the Duke's skills. The girl clarifies that her skill differs from that of ordinary knights. She asks with a sly smile if he even acknowledges the observers as their leader. The young man is confused and tries to understand how Velmady knows about the observers and his role as a leader. The young man, with a slight smile, admits that he doesn't quite understand what they're talking about, and the girl watches him closely, assessing his reaction. The hero's internal tension grows. He feels a pressure that is completely different from that emanating from the Duke. The girl, with a cold smile, compares the Duke's pressure to an icy chill, emphasizing the difference in sensations. In a forest clearing, the heroes discuss the signal for return, and the girl decides to return first, while the young man goes in search of the others. She addresses her companion by name, and he responds to her words with surprise. The young man admits with a smile that he is not sure what she means and suggests meeting at the tents. The young man, sitting thoughtfully on his horse, doubts that Theodore will ever give permission and does not understand what he could teach Velati. He wonders if he ever considered training the direct heir to the House of Elton. The girl watches him leave and notes that he is not afraid of her and is more confident than she expected. She wonders if it has something to do with him being the leader of the Watchers, and mentally notes that she's already cast the bait. An inner voice tells me that all that remains is to wait for the right moment to catch my fish. The girl confidently takes the reins of her horse, Alexander, asking him to stand still. The girl notes that both the owner and the horse, Alexander, behave equally stubbornly, recalling that her mother bought this horse for Meldor's birthday. She recalls with annoyance that it was she who asked for the horse as a gift, and in the original story, Alexander was the favorite of the eldest son. In the novel, the Duchess gave this horse to her firstborn, and a similar episode had already occurred in the book. The thought of what happened makes the heroine uncomfortable, because in reality Meldor never rode Alexander and was able to saddle him only with the help of his father. As a result, Alexander spent many years locked in a stall, and only out of pity for him did the heroine decide to ride him. Meldor, unable to contain his emotions, threw a real tantrum because of this gift. The young man reflects that he cannot object if his father has given permission, and considers it a waste to keep such a horse locked up, hoping that he can tame it. In the forest, two young men meet Velmati and are surprised that she is alone, wondering where the other knights are. The girl explains that the knights are still collecting loot in the forest, and her interlocutors are amazed at her success. Velmati smiles and remarks that she probably caught more than anyone else, while one of the young men boasts about his second place in last year's tournament. The girl asks with interest who took first place and receives the answer that it was her father. The young man looks into the distance with slight sadness, remembering that it was her father who was the best in the tournament. A man in dress uniform returns and quietly announces his arrival. The king announces with a smile that now that the last participant has arrived, the results of the competition can be summed up. Participants are ordered to lay out all their catch on the ground, and the field becomes filled with hunting trophies. The father, with a good-natured grin, teases his son, who has again caught more than he did, and he easily admits his success. Another father praises his son for his efforts, and he accepts the praise with gratitude. The girl, watching from the side, sadly notes that both young men have good relationships with their parents. A girl with a thoughtful look compares her family with others, feeling the difference. A red fox appears in the clearing, and it becomes clear that Duke Elton has caught it, as expected. Everyone admits that the top spot will go to Duke Elton again, and he responds modestly to the praise. One of the young men asks Velati why her knights have not returned yet, and another remarks that with such a delay even the awards ceremony might take place without them. Velati confidently replies that her knights will appear soon, and she remains calm. She notes with a slight smile to herself that they are finally here. The Velati knights finally arrive with a cart full of loot, apologizing for the delay and expressing their regrets to their mistress. The young man is surprised to see genuine amazement reflected on his father's face. The girl reflects with a slight smile that she even likes this new feeling for her. The young man is amazed by the results of the girl's first hunt and considers her level worthy of the title of genius. Another young man joins the company, surprised that Velati managed to catch the red fox, and her success arouses sincere admiration. Velati's hunting trophies impress everyone, and one of the men notes that her skills are no joke. The father laughs proudly, claiming that his daughter inherited not only her looks, but also her talent. Velati bows her head humbly to the king, acknowledging that she still has much to learn, and the king is pleased that all the released red foxes have been captured. Judging by the quantity and size of the catch, it is clear that the Duke has won the hunt. The Duke proudly notes that the red fox's skin remains clean and undamaged. The girl understands that she cannot surpass her father in the number of prey, so she tried to keep the skin in perfect condition, demonstrating her accuracy. Duke Elton receives the highest score and becomes the winner of the hunting tournament. As a reward, the king allows the duke to choose any trophy from the treasury. The king turns to the girl who took second place and places great hopes on her, noting her success in the first tournament. For the second place, the king is preparing a separate award, highlighting her achievements. Young people look at what is happening with surprise and admiration, realizing the significance of the moment. On the velvet pillow, a spiritual sword from the Megala Empire, intended as a reward for second place, glitters. The girl with scarlet eyes rejoices, having finally received the desired reward, and notes that the sword is completely identical to the original. The young man in dress uniform is amazed, seeing such surprise on his father's face for the first time. The girl is offered to try to get the sword, and she confidently agrees. With a slight smile and a glint in her eyes, she confidently raises the shining sword, enjoying the moment of triumph. The king notes with doubt that the sword is an unusual reward for a girl who does not own a weapon, but she assures him with a smile that this is the best gift in her life. The emperor recalls with interest that 200 years ago the 7th Duke of Elton gave this sword to the imperial family, and now a descendant returns it back, calling it a wonderful sight. The girl bows her head in gratitude, noting that it is a great honor to receive such a valuable sword as a reward, and sincerely thanks him for his generosity. The tournament is declared over and the participants begin to disperse, with the girl leaving, clutching her sword tightly. She is determined that she will not let anyone take this sword from her, feeling its power in her hand. The story of how her ancestor, the 7th Duke of Elton, found this spirit sword during the war comes to mind. Duke Elton presented the Zanpakuto to the emperor after the war with the Northern Empire of Megala, but for the heroine, the past is of little importance. In the original story, this sword belonged to the eldest son. This episode was a very important part of the plot. The main character, Nessia, wanted to buy a sword as a gift for her older brother on his coming of age, but Meldor rejected the idea. The tournament Meldor spoke of turned out to be the very one being held this year, linking the past and the present. The girl decides that participating in the tournament is a chance to impress Geoffrey, and at the same time get the sword, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The girl holds the heavy case with ease and turns to the knight, who listens attentively to her request. She instructs him to deliver a valuable item to the estate safely, much to his surprise. The knight agrees to carry out the task, amazed that it usually takes 2 grown men to lift the case, and reflects on her strength. A young man with a white horse approaches the girl, worried about whether she will be able to accept such a valuable sword. She replies with a smile that she sees no reason to refuse the gift from the imperial family, because she really likes the sword. The other rider happily places great expectations on her, and the companion with the white horse does not intend to interfere with her decision. A young man on a horse rejoices at his girlfriend's success, noting that even second place brings him satisfaction. The girl with red eyes smiles, but feels slightly guilty about her victory. She recalls that she had a talent for fencing from birth, and her close friends always knew about it. One of her friends in particular constantly tried to convince her, dreaming that she would become a knight who would go down in history. The girl sadly admits that, as the eldest, she cannot allow her friend to feel inferior to her. As a child, her friends often made fun of her abilities, but they always supported her on this path. Friends sympathetically remind Velati that she shouldn't hold back for her brother's sake. The girl remembers how these words used to hurt her, because all her efforts seemed in vain. The realization of the truth only intensified her inner experiences. Despite past grievances, she smiles, enjoying the moment with her friends. The cheerful mood is passed on to everyone, and the day ends on a joyful note. That evening, a warm sunset descends over the mansion, bringing an eventful day to a close. A girl with long black hair enters the room, smiling and answering her father's call. Her father, sitting at the table among a pile of papers, notes her efforts and asks what she plans to do with the reward from the king. Standing on the carpet, she says that she is going to keep the award as a family heirloom because it is a gift from an ancestor. In her mind, she decides to value this item, but at the same time she must use it. Her father approves of her decision, and the girl is glad that she doesn't have to give the reward to her brother. Her father offers to reward her personally if she wants it. The girl recalls that her father always asked about her desires when she achieved something, and she anticipates his reaction. She assures her father that the Zanpakuto is enough for her, but asks for permission to try to tame Alexander. Her father is surprised by her request, noting that people usually ask for dresses or jewelry, but Alexander belongs to her brother. The girl mentally explains that she is not asking to give Alexander to her, because this horse was chosen by his mother personally. Her father doubts she can handle it alone, and she admits she will need the help of an experienced knight. Her father asks if she has a candidate in mind, waiting for her answer. The girl, with a confident smile, suggests the candidacy of Sir Geoffrey Vincent, considering him the ideal choice. The young man asks the name again in surprise and wonders why this particular knight was chosen. She recalls that she was not close with the knights of the family, but Sir Vincent always supported her at the hunting tournament, and he can be trusted. The other two found Alexander's stubborn horse too much to handle, but Sir Vincent was different. The girl notes that her choice surprised her interlocutor, but he is confident that taming the horse will not be difficult for Vincent. The young man agrees with her decision and promises to instruct Sir Vincent to do everything possible to tame Alexander. The girl confidently promises her father that she can make Alexander a devoted and gentle horse. She adds with a slight smile that she will change Geoffrey himself. The girl meets the knight at the stables, and a polite conversation begins between them after a long separation. She offers to go for a horse ride with a slight smile, holding the reins of her horse. The knight, a little embarrassed, agrees to accompany her, not hiding his slight excitement. The girl notes to herself that the endless plains are the pride of their estate, because there are few such open spaces in the empire. She decides that they first need to get as far away from the estate as possible, and the two of them set off along a shady road. Once alone, she explains that one cannot enter here without the family's permission, and remarks that this place is ideal for fencing, leaving the knight at a loss to guess her intentions. The girl looks at her interlocutor with cold determination, surprised that he still hasn't understood her hints, and notes that she gave him enough time to think. The young man, a little confused, promises to answer the most important question for her in order to dispel her doubts. He begins to talk about the Watchers, explaining that it is natural for their influential family to have their own intelligence network. The girl mentally notes that the encrypted messages only made her task easier, and she was able to decipher them with ease. The young man is shocked by her abilities, not hiding his surprise and anxiety. She admits with a slight smile that if she managed to decipher the messages, then finding them was not difficult, and with this she finally convinces her interlocutor of her insight. The young man realizes his defeat with a tired sigh and despite this smiles, acknowledging his failure. The girl proudly says that she found a pattern and deciphered the text, and her interlocutor admires her intelligence. She didn't actually decipher the code, but she thinks it's important that she was able to remember the information she needed. The girl asks with a smile what the answer to her proposal will be, confidently awaiting a decision. The young man explains that he cannot teach her because of the ban. However, she had thoughtfully arranged everything so that they could spend time together. The girl, with a mysterious smile, reflects on the reasons why she was chosen so carefully, and hears that the goal was not only to get her, but also all the observers. The young man notes with slight alarm that winning him over is one thing, but the observers are quite another, since they are loyal only to the head of the Elton ducal house. The girl, looking straight ahead, asks Sir Vincent to give her a simple yes or no answer. The young man, a little confused, answers in the affirmative. She asks if he is ready to train the heir of the Elton house. Sir Vincent, on bended knee, thanks Lady Velati for the chance to fulfill his dream. The young man vows to be a faithful teacher and subject until the day she rules the world. The girl accepts his vow, agreeing to the terms. She extends her hand, asking you to follow her, even if her path turns out to be difficult. The young man bows his head respectfully and promises to remember her words. So Geoffrey, having sworn allegiance, becomes her ally and immediately sets up a fencing training schedule. A training ground is set up in a forest clearing, where they begin to hone their sword skills, taking advantage of the fact that their father is busy and Meldor does not like horse riding. In the original story, Geoffrey was the heir's most capable and reliable subordinate, but now everything starts anew. Lady Velati arrives at a luxurious estate where she is greeted by servants. She inquires about her father's whereabouts and learns that he has gone to the Imperial Palace for a council meeting. When she asks about Meldor, she is told that he has finished dinner and is now resting in his room. Having learned about Alexander's training, Meldor threw a tantrum for which he was scolded by his father, and from then on stopped talking to his sister. This was a relief for the heroine because now she had less trouble. In the dimly lit corridor, the servants seemed gloomy and lifeless, like shadows of the past. Not only the people, but the entire estate lost its former joy, because with the departure of the mother, the light and warmth disappeared, giving way to cold silence. The memories of the past are completely consistent with the original story, where a happy girl holds a bouquet in her hands. In such an atmosphere, even the most cheerful person can feel melancholy, and the heroine begins to think about changes. The young man advises her to first win over the servants in order to strengthen her influence in the house, and she agrees that he is right. The heroine gives orders, and the servants readily accept her instructions, submitting to the new order. A young man is surprised to receive the order to take a new furniture catalog with him and does not understand why it is needed. The girl watches his reaction with a cold gaze, not revealing her true intentions. On the stairs, she gives an order, and the man, with slight excitement, confirms that he understands everything. The girl irritably notes to herself that this butler constantly clings to her words, unlike the previous Charles. A butler and a maid holding a thick book enter the room and ask if they were called. The girl, sitting on the sofa, is interested in the catalog, and the maid hands her the latest copy that has just been sent from the store. The girl leafs through a furniture catalog and clarifies that all the furnishings in the house are left over from last year. The maid apologizes, explaining that due to the illness of the owner, it was not possible to update the interior, and she only rearranged the furniture at her own discretion. The girl calms the maid, saying that she does not blame her, because due to her mother's illness, there was neither time nor energy for shopping. In this society, the housewife must change the decoration of her home every season to comply with traditions. Mother didn't like redecorating, but she always chose colors that suited the season, creating a special atmosphere. After Meldor confessed that he loved the color black, the interior remained gloomy for a whole year, and when his mother fell ill, a change of scenery became impossible. And now, despite the summer, darkness reigns in the house. The girl understands that if the gloomy atmosphere of the estate is not changed, all hope will fade, and decides to urgently update the interior so that the servants do not fall into despair. She instructs the maid to order all the necessary furniture from the catalog to completely transform the house. The butler, in a panic, reminds that such purchases cannot be made without the permission of the Duke and the heir. The maid enthusiastically agrees, assuring that if you place your order quickly, everything will be delivered within a few days. The girl sternly asks the butler if he has learned nothing from his father Charles and warns him about the consequences of raising his voice. Flashbacks are taken to when Charles retired 2 years ago due to illness, and at his request, his son was chosen as the new butler. Rover, accustomed to serving his father and Meldor, listens more to their opinions than to the heroine's words, and that is why she has tolerated his insolence until now. The girl coldly reminds him that if he wants to remain the head butler, he should learn tact, because after the death of the mistress, responsibility for the estate will fall to someone else. Rover, confused, tries to justify himself, but the girl points out that her father is too busy with external affairs to worry about the interior of the house. She presses him, reminding him that Meldor is overloaded with studies and fencing, and demands an immediate answer. With a terrifying look and an icy voice, she asks the main question who will now manage the estate. The young man turns to Lady Velati in confusion, not hiding his excitement. The girl, with cold determination, clarifies whose permission she needs to order new furniture and change the decor of the estate. Realizing his mistake, the man rushes to apologize and receives instructions to prepare as many workers as possible. The girl orders the maid to warn the others, and she readily agrees. Velati reflects that she needs to win over the servants to her side to strengthen her position. She understands that to do this, she first needs to find an approach to the head maid and the butler, because they are the ones who manage all the servants. Emily, who had been around for a long time, had already become a reliable person, and now only Rover was left. Unlike Geoffrey, Rover was not mentioned much in the original story, and seems like someone easy to get. With a slight confidence, she decides that soon all the servants of the estate will carry out her orders. A few days later, sunlight illuminates the facade of the mansion, where the renovation begins. Velati confidently directs the servants, distributing tablecloths and curtains throughout the rooms, and the maids listen attentively to her instructions. She urges the workers on by promising a special bonus for fast work, and everyone enthusiastically agrees to fulfill her request. She watches with satisfaction as the servants quickly and accurately carry out her orders. The absence of her father and Meldor gives her complete freedom, and she mentally compares herself to a fox who has taken the place of a lion. The girl decides that now it's time to take care of the greenhouse to complete the transformation of the house. The greenhouse, created for my mother, was always filled with flowers that my father brought from all over the world. Particular attention in this place is given to the crystal columns, decorated with sapphires with the magic of preservation, thanks to which flowers bloom all year round. She wryly reflects on why all the mothers in novels love flowers so much, and believes that such a building would be more suitable for storing jewelry rather than ordinary plants. She decides that since she's renovating, she should turn the greenhouse into a personal storage area for her decorations. Memories take her back to the time when her mother invited her to tea in the greenhouse, and Meldor immediately began pestering her as soon as her mother left. Meldor speaks enviously of her delicate hands, comparing them to his own, covered in calluses from training. The girl notes with irritation that he is at it again, and thinks that he will never understand how these words affect her. She decides to simply ignore him, pretending to be busy with her tea. Meldor indignantly demands an answer, not understanding her silence. Meldor angrily demands attention, threatening to upset his sister. The girl is surprised to feel the magical attack on herself and understands that she must immediately block it. She is amazed that Meldor decided to use offensive magic, and is glad that he has basic defense. A sudden pain grips her arm, and she guesses that it is due to the sudden use of magic. Meldor looks at his sister with confusion, surprised by her reaction, because he was the one who started using magic first. The girl runs out of the house in panic, noticing her brother and rushing up the steps towards him. She looks over Meldor with concern, noticing the blood and worrying if he is injured elsewhere. A woman enters the room, and the girl explains that Meldor attacked her with magic, and she was only trying to defend herself. The woman reproaches her older sister, believing that she should not harm her younger brother, despite the circumstances. The girl justifies herself by saying she defended herself first, and reflects on how dangerous magic is in the hands of a child who has just begun training. Remembering her mother's words about the need to always take care of her younger brother, she bitterly realizes that in this house, her sympathies will never be able to surpass her affection for Meldor. The woman watches her sister and brother with sadness, remembering that she has never again experienced such grief as she did then. That day, the mother began treating Meldor and kicked her out of the greenhouse, leaving her outside the door. Behind the closing door, she remembered Meldor's bright gaze, watching her intently. She reflects that if her mother were alive, she would try to return all the wounds inflicted on her, but admits that perhaps it is better that she died. Even now, remembering her past life, she feels strong anger, but her love for her mother is stronger. Despite the pain, she decides not to leave the greenhouse that has brought so much suffering, and orders all the furniture to be replaced with new ones. The servants rush to arrange new furniture, and the girl clenches her fist, watching the changes in the house. Meldor bursts into the room indignantly, not understanding what is happening. He accuses his sister of daring to change the greenhouse, considering it madness. The girl calmly explains that she is simply changing the sofas to ones that are appropriate for the season, and asks not to shout without reason. Meldor is outraged that all the commotion in the mansion is caused because of her, and accuses his sister of recklessness after the death of their mother. Rover tries to explain that seasonal repairs are a common occurrence in their family, and advises Meldor not to interfere and to mind his own business. Meldor indignantly declares that he too has the right to take care of his family and must correct the behavior of others if they behave inappropriately. The girl reacts to his words with cold fury, mentally repeating the offensive comparison with an immature foal. Meldor, as the heir of the Elton house, accuses his sister of bad manners and claims that she would not have dared to act like that in front of her mother. The girl's inner voice reproaches her with bitterness and pain, reminding her that after her mother's death, she allows herself too much and is not worthy of being called a daughter. The girl abruptly stops her brother, not allowing him to continue, and firmly says no. She confidently declares that the management of the estate now falls on her as the eldest daughter, although she internally admits that she is still not ready for this responsibility. The girl looms over her brother with a cold gaze, mentally noting that she could harm him. She restrains herself and leaves, and Meldor is surprised to realize that his sister could actually have acted differently. Inside, she thinks that until she receives official powers, she cannot allow herself to create problems and spoil the impression on her father. Meldor, without holding back his emotions, again tries to use magic against his sister, using his mother's icy power. The girl thinks with irritation that her brother is ready to use dangerous magic even when angry, and wonders where he inherited such a character from. Suddenly, she realizes that she can use this situation to her advantage and easily gain control of the greenhouse. A flash of magic illuminates her palm as the girl, with cold determination, allows Meldor to attack. Meldor gathers his strength with anger and defiance, not doubting his resolve to attack. Suddenly, his face contorts with fear as he realizes that he is using magic related to his mother. Meldor is confused and reproachfully asks why his sister did not dodge his attack, since she could have done so without difficulty. The girl explains with a slight smile that she was so scared that she accidentally deflected his powerful attack and wonders why he used such force. Meldor, in despair, accuses his sister of destroying their mother's greenhouse, but she calmly replies that he himself is to blame because it was his magic that destroyed everything, and the greenhouse is now useless. Meldor, in a rage, rushes at his sister, shouting that he will not forgive her for this act. At this moment, a man with dark hair appears in the room and calls Meldor's name in a menacing voice. A man with red eyes and a cold expression demands to know what is going on and why there is such a mess. The father returns home and demands to know what happened to the greenhouse, turning to the children. The girl is about to tell the truth, but Meldor, holding back tears, accuses his sister of trying to change the greenhouse without permission. She watches her brother with concern, mentally noting that he is only 12 years old and still a child. The father, wearily covering his face with his hand, asks Veladi to explain the situation, but she refuses. Then the father calls Rover and instructs him to objectively tell about what happened. Rover confirms his readiness to carry out the order, and everyone waits for his explanation. The young man's gaze fills with alarm as he suddenly becomes aware of what is happening around him. The girl with cold determination reminds of the warning and advises to act correctly if you are afraid of the consequences. The young man excitedly explains that Lady Veladi had begun a major renovation of the estate and wanted to replace the furniture in the greenhouse for the season. The man in the black uniform explains that while the furniture was being rearranged, a young gentleman entered the greenhouse and misunderstood everything. Meldor shouts indignantly, considering it presumptuous to change anything in his mother's greenhouse. The girl, with tired sadness, admits that this is exactly how it is, and internally agrees with the accusation. The girl tried to accept her mother's invitations, but after one incident, even looking at the greenhouse became painful for her, and she began to refuse. For her mother and Meldor, what happened did not matter, so they did not understand her behavior, and she did not want to see her mother showing mad love for her brother. A man in a black uniform inquires about the sapphires, and a servant explains that there was a falling out between the young master and Lady Veladi due to an unsuccessful use of magic. Meldor justifies himself by saying that he only wanted to scare his sister, but she suddenly changed the direction of the magic, although she had always dodged it before. The girl explains that she reflexively used magic in response to the sudden attack and accidentally changed the direction of Meldor's spell. Meldor angrily accuses his sister of doing it on purpose, not believing her excuses. The father calls his son's name with a cold gaze, and a tense silence falls in the room. Meldor lowers his head, holding back tears and feeling guilty for what happened. Father orders Rover to take all the servants away so that he can be alone with the children. The servants quickly leave the hall, and the father remains with Meldor, preparing for a serious conversation. Meldor apologizes with remorse, and his father warns that if he uses magic in the estate again, he will be banned from attending classes. The father explains that he allowed the practice of magic because of his son's abilities, but all this is meaningless if he only uses power in quarrels. Meldor, holding back tears, admits his guilt and repents of what happened. The father watches his son with tired silence, not rushing to answer. He gently explains that he understands his son's desire to study magic, since other activities are difficult for him. The father reminds him that Meldor is the heir of the Elton family and asks him to be patient a little longer for the sake of the future. Meldor, wiping away tears, agrees with his father and promises to be more careful. Her father approaches Veladi, reminding her how much the greenhouse means to her brother, who recently lost his mother, and she sadly admits that she understands this. The father, with a cold look, reproaches his daughter for interfering without permission and starting a quarrel with her brother. The girl regretfully admits that she got carried away with renovating the estate and promises to correct the mistake, although she is inwardly indignant that they are scolding her and not Meldor, who used dangerous magic. Her father demands that she maintain propriety and not cause trouble, and she reluctantly agrees. The girl looks at her brother with irritation, mentally calling him a hateful little brat, but admits that she is used to such situations. She decides with a cold smile that she already has a plan on how to proceed. In the evening, a servant informs her that the Duke is calling her, and she prepares for a new conversation. The girl in the blue dress leaves the room, mentally noting that her time has come. After all the events, the Duke demands a detailed explanation, and the servant provides him with a full report. All the servants give the same testimony because they were instructed in advance, and the Duke quickly figures everything out. The girl enters the office where her father meets her and calmly says that she came at his call. The father confirms that he knows about what happened in the greenhouse and admits that he was unfair in blaming her. She regretfully takes responsibility for what happened, but hopes that if she turns the greenhouse into a useful room, her brother will understand her actions. She decides to turn the greenhouse into a storage room for jewelry without considering it necessary to ask Meldor's permission. Her father entrusts her with completing the renovation of the greenhouse and the entire estate, placing the responsibility in her hands. Having received approval, the girl thanks her father and prepares to leave. Her father allows her to go, and she leaves the office with relief. As she leaves, she advises her father not to stay late at work and to take care of himself. The father calmly replies that he will figure it out himself, and the girl agrees with slight irony, mentally noting his stubbornness. Having received approval for the renovation, the girl realizes that she has been entrusted with the internal management of the estate, which means that the salaries and work of all the servants now depend on her. She is surprised to note that everything is going according to her plan, although she previously thought that Meldor would always push her away. At her disposal are Alexander, the spirit sword, and her faithful assistant, Jeffrin. The mother's greenhouse and all internal affairs of the estate now belong entirely to her. However, she understands that this is not enough for real power and success. A tired hand falls on the papers when thoughts of accumulated fatigue do not give rest. A man in a dress uniform sits thoughtfully at a table, deep in thought, against the backdrop of the evening hours. In an old family photograph, he recalls that after his wife's death, he doesn't understand how to communicate with his children, although he still spends a little time with Meldor. After his wife's funeral, his concern for Veladi only intensifies because before, her gaze was brighter and warmer. He admits that he always invested in Meldor as his heir, while Veladi remained on the sidelines, seeming like a stranger to him. Lately, he has been increasingly wondering if he was too harsh with his daughter, since he deliberately spoke cold and harsh words to her. The man, looking tired, wonders whether he was so strict with his daughter because she was the eldest, or because he had placed special hopes on her, seeing himself in her. The mother worries that if Veladi is left with a scar from the sword, who will want to marry her and will her future husband love her? As the eldest daughter of House Elton, Veladi was impossible to ignore, for the days when husbands could treat their wives as they pleased were long gone. Mother Veladi was born in the northern slums, spent her childhood there, and then lived in the forest with the snow spirit. The mother was completely out of touch with the changing times, fearing that her daughter might get a scar on her face while fencing. Despite Veladi's talent, she was not allowed to pursue her dreams because fencing was considered too dangerous for a girl. The mother explains that Meldor is the heir and the youngest, so they cannot miss this important time for him, and Veladi, as a grown-up girl, must understand their choice. The girl desperately begs her father not to send her away, but he, agreeing with his wife's arguments, ignores her request. This was the first and last time Veladi expressed her opinion, and from then on she withdrew into herself. The father admits that he did not want to feel guilty at home, so he devoted all his attention to his son and external responsibilities. Now, looking at the past, he bitterly realizes his sentimentality and understands that he can't change anything. Even if Veladi seems strange, he doesn't see a problem with it, because from the very beginning she was the child who always managed on her own. Looking at the photograph, the man convinces himself that his daughter will learn everything on her own and grow up with dignity, and he considers internal discomfort to be part of growing up. An image of his wife appears before his mind's eye, carefully advising him not to linger in the office and to take a rest. He is surprised to note that, despite the changes, she still cares for him and regrets that he did not respond to her more kindly. Taking up the pen, he decides that he cannot allow himself to play the role of a happy father, because now it is impossible. He reminds himself that he is responsible for the northern lands of the Empire, and cannot allow personal feelings to take over. Rover enters the office, and the man allows him in, returning to business. Rover hands the girl the documents he was working on before her arrival, so she can understand how the estate works. She is surprised that everything is organized much better than she expected and notes the neatness of the papers. Rover admits that he recently became the head butler, but his father strictly trained him in paperwork. The girl looks at the expense reports at home and clarifies their purpose. Rover explains that he prepared these documents specifically for her to help her get used to internal affairs. He believes that she was entrusted with management too early and wants to support her since she is not yet familiar with budgeting. The girl asks with disbelief whether she can now really manage her budget independently. Rover confirms with a smile that she now determines her own personal expenses and must fill out an expense report. She asks with irritation whether she is now obliged to account to him for every coin spent. Rover happily agrees, promising to let him know if the expenses seem excessive, and the girl notes that he had been unnoticed before. Remembering the traditions, she understands that it is the manager of internal affairs who always determines the budgets of all family members. Now, as Rover said, for the first time she can decide how much to spend on herself, and this opens up new opportunities for her. The girl in the luxurious red dress looks down, remembering that she never allowed herself to buy expensive things, desperately trying to be a good daughter. She admits that she could not do anything that could disappoint her parents, and even agreed to a smaller amount than her brother without complaining. With doubt and irritation, she wonders why anyone now dares to tell her how to manage her money. The girl reproachfully asks if the butler is going to interfere if she wants to buy herself something luxurious. The butler, with a polite smile, assures that he does not want to interfere, but is only concerned as the chief manager of the estate. With cold determination, she orders him to leave, not wanting to listen to his explanations any longer, and repeats her order when he tries to object. The girl restrains her irritation as she watches her interlocutor leave and mentally prepares for a response. The butler, leaving, asks to call him if necessary and reminds about filling out an expense report. She notes his arrogance with a smirk and decides to use his petty tricks to her advantage. The girl makes a plan to teach Rover a lesson and show him his place. She wondered what would happen when she taught the arrogant Rover a lesson. A maid enters the room, awaiting further orders from Lady Velmadi. The girl asks the maid if she knows about her from her brother, and, having received an affirmative answer, she decides with relief that this will simplify matters. She announces that the maid will now become her personal maid and will convey all secret messages. The maid calmly agrees, mentally noting that her name is Stia Walker. It turns out that Stia is Jeffrin's younger sister and a spy disguised as a maid, and their last names are different because they are half-brother and sister. The girl notices that because of their different mothers, Stia and Jeffrin do not look alike, unlike her and Meldor, who have similar facial features. She also assigns Stia the role of spy to keep an eye on the person who is not the head of the house. The maid quietly acknowledges that her brother has chosen a new mistress and expresses confidence in his decision. The girl hands the maid a sealed letter, deciding to entrust her with her first important task. She orders the letter to be delivered to Jeffrey secretly so that no one will find out, and orders it to be burned after reading. Having received the instructions, the maid bows and confirms her readiness to carry out the order. The girl notes with satisfaction that now Stia, like Jeffrin, has become her reliable ally. It turns out that the maid has magical abilities and uses her own unique spells. The girl mentally notes Jeffrey's incredible abilities as she stands in front of him and his companion. She feels so content that she doesn't even need food and is looking forward to her father leaving the house. Several days pass, and on a rainy night someone approaches the mansion. A pair of wet boots appears on the threshold and the stranger addresses Lady Velmadi. A figure in a black cloak appears in the room, and the girl greets the long-awaited guest with a smile. She is delighted, anticipating how Rover will react to the appearance of this man. A man in a black cloak appears against a backdrop of flashes of lightning, his face hidden in shadow, and the heroine wonders with curiosity what his expression will be. The young butler hurries down the corridor in confusion, not believing what he has heard and considering it incredible. He, as the head butler of the estate, had just learned something astonishing from Emily. The maid shares the news with a smile that the lady is going to invest a large sum of her own money. She notes with admiration that the owner always thinks big and is willing to spend generously. The butler is shocked to learn of plans to build a grand shooting range using the lady's personal funds. Arriving at the shooting range, he sees that the fences have already been installed and preparations for construction are in full swing. The butler is furious and considers the lady's plans insane, as he expected her extravagance to be limited to clothes and jewelry. He is outraged that she did not even fill out a personal expense report and is now demonstratively ignoring it. In his eyes, such spending is no different from throwing gold to the wind, and he decides that it is his duty to stop her recklessness. Knocking on the door, he introduces himself and asks permission to enter. Entering, he reproachfully asks how Lady Velody could decide to do such a thing alone. His surprise reaches its limit when he hears an unexpected answer. An elderly man appears in the spacious living room, greeting the butler, and a girl in a light dress sits on the sofa. The old man, with a kind smile, asks how the butler is doing and is clearly glad to meet him. He laughs loudly, teasing the young man for his stiffness and asking if he is glad to see him. The butler, surprised, asks if it really is Mr. William in front of him and why he is in Lady Velody's office, and the old man explains that he came by invitation. The girl from the sofa invites the guests to come in and sit down, reminding them not to keep her waiting. The butler hurries to fulfill the request, and the old man notices with a smile that he is still as fussy as before. A girl in a blue dress calmly greets the butler, who has come to discuss the construction of a shooting range with her. The young man, visibly nervous, begins a conversation about the project, not knowing how to explain his concerns. Hearing about the plans to dig a pond at the shooting range, he exclaims in surprise, and the girl calmly replies that she is using only her own personal funds. An elderly man enters the room and smiles, making fun of the butler's panic, reminding him of his former habits. The old man claims to have seen Lady Velody's expenses and believes that this amount is not enough to influence the duchy. An inner voice is surprised that such large funds actually belong to the Duke's daughter and not to the entire house. The older man, with a slight grin, remarks that the distribution of funds is Charles's fault, and the young butler justifies himself by saying that everything was done at the behest of the Duchess. The old man sadly recalls how he once was the chief butler in the capital and claims that the affairs of the estate are clear to him. The girl, with a satisfied smile, notes to herself that William played his role perfectly, as intended. The memoirs reveal that William was a butler in the capital, but left after the heroine's birth due to his wife's illness. His place was taken by Charles, the former butler of the northern castle, although he was inferior in rank to the capital's. The girl thanks William for the work he has done, and he modestly replies that she is not worth the thanks. The young man is dismayed to learn that a report he recently submitted is being discussed. An elderly man points out oddities in the report, causing concern in his interlocutor. He turns his attention to the list of northern vassals and asks why a certain person was included. The young man admits that he used his father's 2-year report without double-checking the data. The elderly man reproaches him for his inattention, since during this time the Baron died and the title passed to his son, and many other errors were found in the report. The girl jokes with a smile about whether William would like to work for their family again, and the old man replies that he is not sure whether Rover would like it. A cold fire flashes in the girl's eyes when she thinks about Rover interfering even with her personal funds, justifying it with concern for the future of the estate. She is confident that Rover will appreciate the guidance of a more experienced butler, but Rover himself exclaims that this is not the case. Rover excitedly declares that he is the head butler of the estate and will not tolerate any encroachment on his authority. William says goodbye, promising to return soon, and the girl watches the men leave from the sofa. Rover calls out to William in confusion, not understanding what is happening. The girl sternly asks Rover if he has the right to say such words, putting him in his place. Rover, confused, tries to justify himself but cannot find the words. The girl reproaches him for interfering in her personal affairs and for allowing himself to behave this way when something is not according to his will. Her harsh words leave him surprised and confused. Tears well up in Rover's eyes, and the girl wonders with surprise if a grown man is really going to cry now. She reflects that Rover seems like a sheltered young gentleman who knows no real injustice and decides to stop scolding him for later use. The girl admits that the situation is indeed unfair, but notes that Rover's words are a manifestation of pure arrogance. The young man recalls with dismay that Charles taught him to respect butlers and be loyal to the Elton household. The memory comes to mind of the teachings about loyalty to the House of Elton, which were passed down from generation to generation. The girl in the blue dress notices that loyalty is not just words, and decides to teach him the true meaning of devotion. She shows documents that are almost identical to those Charles wrote, except for the dates. The young man apologizes to Lady Velody, and she notes that he has done nothing wrong since he serves the same house. The girl explains that minor mistakes can be corrected, but if he wants to be a copy of his father, he must behave with dignity and not blindly imitate him. The girl asks not to spread the word about William's visit, explaining that he came at her request and lets her interlocutor go. The young man, nervously, is about to say something, and the girl asks what is going on. In his memoirs, he admits that he spent his entire life trying to catch up with his father, hoping to become the same head butler. Even after taking this position, he feels that he is still far from his father's level. He apologizes sincerely to Lady Velody, and she wonders if that's all he wanted to say. Inwardly, he admires the lady's wisdom and wonders if he has any other path than to be a copy of his father. In the library, a girl invites a young man to find the answer to his inner question on his own, but promises to suggest one of the options. With a mysterious smile, she invites him to become her man, making it clear that she expects fidelity from him. The young man, confused, asks if she really wants him to be her man, and the girl confirms her choice. In rays of golden light, he kneels before her, accepting her offer and promising to carry out her commands. The young man nervously asserts that a butler is obliged to remain neutral and not take sides. His interlocutor asks with disbelief whether he is really remaining neutral now, and the guy is at a loss for an answer. The butler clasps his hands nervously, admitting that he may be doing the wrong thing. The girl on the couch clarifies that he follows Charles's words and asks how he plans to get out of his shadow if he is so obedient. She advises him not to worry, because right now the most important thing for him is the Duke's orders, because he is the owner of the estate. The boy agrees, and the girl explains that becoming her person simply means changing the order of priorities, and now her orders will be more important to him than his father's orders. The young man recalls that his father does not show much interest in the estate and does not give any instructions. The girl calmly reasons that even if someone finds out about the butler's priorities, there is nothing to worry about, since he reports to the person responsible for internal affairs. The guy agrees with her words with relief, recognizing their fairness. She asks him to think about it and lets him go if he has no more questions. The butler thanks her and leaves the room feeling relieved. In the corridor, he quickly comes to his senses as soon as he stops worrying and regains his calm. The girl turns around at the knock on the door and allows entry. A man of noble appearance and a maid enter the room, and he asks how his performance went today. The girl cautiously asks if anyone noticed his visit, but the man replies that it doesn't matter. In fact, he came under a magical disguise, hiding his true identity. The maid watches in amazement as the man uses magic and is warned not to play with someone else's power. Another young man happily notes that he hasn't experienced such excitement for a long time, and he is overwhelmed with emotion. The girl notes that both servants did a good job, especially highlighting Jeffrey's acting skills. She praises Stia for her excellent command of magic, and Stia thanks her mistress. Inwardly, the heroine admires her brother and sister's abilities, realizing that maintaining transformation magic is extremely difficult. She reflects on the estate's protective magic, which had to be weakened slightly on the second floor. The heroine notes that, with such talents, Jeffrey could become a spy, and decides to entrust them with a more difficult task next time. Finally, she asks about the fate of the real William, and learns that he was killed on the orders of the Duke 16 years ago, officially recognized as a traitor. The girl recalls that she initially wanted to find the real William, but considered it inappropriate to waste 2 people on this in order to influence Rover. She later learns that William was a spy, and her father, upon learning of this, used the Watchers to deal with him brutally. The father told the mother, who had just given birth to the heroine, that William had left because his wife was ill. The girl is surprised because this was not in the original story, and wonders if this fact was missed due to the fact that the events took place so long ago. The maid confirms that William did not admit to the reasons for the betrayal or who was behind it. The heroine decides that there is no need to investigate this case and leaves the past alone. The girl learns that the estate's chief butler is now under her command, but she doubts whether her brother made this decision too hastily. She asks if anyone noticed Rover's expression after leaving the office and is told he is fine. The young man notes that a spark has appeared in Rover's eyes, like that of a child who has received a gift, although the soul within him has already faded. The girl notes with satisfaction that this is good news, because now both Emily and Rover are on her side. She decides it's time to begin formal training, and a look of determination appears in her eyes. The man kneels before the girl, swears to serve her for the rest of his days, and sunlight floods the room. The young man excitedly vows to serve his mistress, inspired by the nights from his childhood memories. The girl accepts his oath with approval, surprised at how similar it is to a real knight's oath. From this moment on, time begins to move faster, and 2 seasons change imperceptibly. A girl, tired after training, answers a question about her successes. She is modest about her training, although her interlocutor notes that she trains more than experienced observers. The girl remarks that effort alone is not enough, and the guy calls her a genius among geniuses. The boy notes with alarm that if Elton's knights learn of the speed of her progress, their morale will suffer greatly. The girl is interested in her skill level, and the guy admits that she has already surpassed most of the observers. He is amazed that she has reached such a level in just 6 months, because even the Duke is not capable of this, and every day he restrains himself from bragging about her successes. The girl, taking a sip of water, thinks about something that you wouldn't know at first glance, but the guy is terribly fond of flattering. She notes with satisfaction that she has already gained complete control over the servants. With Rover and Emily by her side, she realizes the others have no choice but to comply. The girl took care of a decent reward for the servants in advance, promising them special bonuses during the renovation of the estate. She notes with a smile that the best place to work is where the pay is better. After training, the girl and her mentor relax in the shade of the trees, discussing her progress in the upcoming meeting. She clarifies that her skills can now be compared to those of the average knight, and the mentor enthusiastically confirms this. The girl happily realizes that the moment they both were waiting for has arrived. Entering the house, she greets the servant and learns that Zion has already arrived and is waiting for her. The young man happily notes that he is in a good mood today because the long-awaited duel will finally take place. The girl is surprised by his enthusiasm, and he admits that he has been waiting for this moment since she started fencing. After the heroine has won over Jeffrey and Rover, she decides to tell them the whole truth. Friends enthusiastically discuss her seriousness, rejoicing that they managed to fulfill their mission and not lose the genius of the century. One of the friends eagerly invites Velody to a duel, admitting that he has always dreamed of this. The girl agrees with a slight smile, anticipating the upcoming fight. The girl admits with a smile that she has just started learning fencing and asks to wait a little to prepare for the fight. 6 months pass, and now she holds the sword confidently, preparing for a duel. The young man happily says that he had been waiting for this moment for a long time, anticipating the fight with Velody. Finally, they meet in combat, crossing swords in a long-awaited duel. A boy with purple hair hands a water skin to his friend sitting on the floor, who thanks him. He then hands the water to the girl with the bandaged arm, and she accepts it with a smile. The fair-haired boy is relieved to be saved, but is surprised by Velody's strength. The girl standing in front of him notes that he is not bad either, but wonders if there is any point in skills if someone is too strong. The third friend says with a smile that doing the impossible is what makes her a genius. Velody recalls with joy that it was her first duel with anyone other than Jeffrin, and she nearly defeated Mostyn with 1 blow. The girl carefully touches an elegant scarf, decorated with a gold pattern among the flowers. The purple-haired guy offers a handkerchief with a smile so as not to sit on the dirty surface and invites you to sit down. The 3 sit down on the floor, and the friends jokingly discuss manners, recalling their upbringings in different families. The fair-haired guy remarks that it was the girl who was raised to be strong, but she insists that she became that way herself. Friends recall their first meeting with Velody, admitting that she made an incredible impression on them, and feel that they grew up similar. Velody recalls her childhood and her first meeting with Mostyn and Zion with a warm smile. A girl in a red dress strokes a white cat with interest, suddenly paying attention to someone nearby. 2 boys sheepishly explain that they usually play here in pairs. The old map shows 3 ducal houses, Elton in the north, Fredo in the west, and Aglar in the south. In these 3 houses, children were born in the same year, and one of them was Velody Elton. Mostyn and Sion from the houses of Fredo and Aglar became friends before they could walk. Unlike them, the Elton household always kept to itself, rarely interacting with other families. Time passed, and when the heroine was about 10 years old, an important incident occurred. That year, by order of the former emperor, the construction of the first school for commoners was completed on the outskirts of the capital. This was the result of a long struggle between the emperor and the council of aristocrats, and was completed during the reign of his son. In honor of this event, the emperor organized a lavish ceremony to which all the aristocratic families were invited. It was there that the heroine first met Moston and Sion, who were too busy playing while she was chatting with girls her age. The ceremony proceeded smoothly until the imperial family left the party first, after which the aristocrats also began to disperse. At one point, an explosion occurs, which becomes an incident that will be talked about for a long time. Several aristocrats who oppose the school for commoners plant bombs in the building, but fortunately, no one is killed. The terrorists, fearing casualties among the aristocrats, placed explosives only in the rear extension of the school. An empty building saves everyone from tragedy, and this turns out to be a real stroke of luck. The girl finds herself at the scene by accident, simply following a white cat. Two boys are looking for a quiet place to play and end up nearby, which marks the beginning of their acquaintance. The purple-haired boy sheepishly says that they are used to playing here together and asks to go somewhere else. The dark-haired girl calmly replies that despite being alone, she was having a great time here, and it was they who were bothering her. The fair-haired boy agrees with a smile that perhaps that is the case and suggests that they play together. Suddenly, the boy turns around, sensing something is wrong, and his face expresses surprise. The girl screams in alarm, warning of danger as a threat approaches them. After the explosion, two children find themselves in the rubble, huddled together in a protective shelter. Three children look at each other with relief after surviving the explosion, not believing that it is all over. The girl remarks that they need to buy new jewelry, and the boys look at her in surprise. Both boys are dismayed to find their brooches shattered into pieces. The girl recalls that high-ranking aristocrats always wear jewelry with protective magic in case of danger. She wore a necklace enchanted by her mother, and the boys' shields worked thanks to their jewelry, but it was her necklace that saved everyone. Precious stones that could withstand the spell were very rare, and among them, including her diamond, only 3 existed. The heroine's mother, one of the greatest magicians, personally engraved a magic circle on her necklace. The girl confidently tells her friends that they survived only thanks to her protection. The fair-haired boy gratefully admits that without her, they would have been in serious trouble. The purple-haired boy apologizes for past fights, not wanting to fight anymore. The girl generously forgives both of them and offers to get out from under the rubble. She explains that waiting for adults is dangerous because the effect of the magical shield does not last forever. The fair-haired boy hesitantly agrees with his friend's arguments, but still cannot get rid of his anxiety. The children, caught in the rubble, wonder how to get out of the trap. The girl in the red dress confidently takes the initiative and asks to follow her. The boys watch her determination with surprise and fear. They grab her hands, not understanding what she is going to do, and worry about her actions. The girl calmly explains that while the magic shield is active, none of their actions will cause harm. The girl had planned a way out of the rubble in advance and understood that she needed to leave the dangerous place before the protective shield disappeared. The boy anxiously wonders what to do if there is someone else left here, and sees no point in simply waiting for the shield to disappear. The girl cautiously notes that all their reasoning is just speculation, and no one can be sure that the adults will be able to come to the rescue in time. The purple-haired boy suggests ending the argument and shares his idea. He is going to use magic to determine if there is anyone alive nearby and asks to wait a little. The girl is surprised by his abilities, but agrees, because the House of Aglar has always been famous for its magicians. A purple-haired boy begins a magical ritual to check if there is anyone alive nearby. He draws a complex magic circle, and his friends watch the process with excitement. Concentrating, the boy reports that there is no one else in this area. The two children make sure that there is no one inside the building and are glad that people have gathered only outside. The girl in the red dress takes the lead and asks to be shown where to start clearing the rubble to help. She notes that the boy has trained with a sword since childhood, so he can easily handle physical work, and he enthusiastically agrees. The girl indicates where to start cleaning and admits that she wants to get out of this stuffy room as soon as possible. The boy readily takes on the work, promising to do everything himself. The girl notices with relief that they have almost reached their goal. The two boys struggle to lift the last heavy stone, surprised by its weight. The girl in the red dress sympathetically asks them to step aside because she feels sorry for their efforts. The boys are surprised because even the two of them couldn't move the stone, and they doubt that she can manage on her own. The girl easily breaks the stone with a powerful kick, amazing everyone with her strength. The boys watch what is happening in amazement, not believing their eyes. The girl notices with relief that the magical barrier has disappeared and is glad that they made it in time. One of the guards excitedly reports that the missing young lady and the boys have been found, and the girl herself emerges from a dark passage. The rescued children and the girl find themselves surrounded by adults who are surprised that they managed to get out on their own and urgently call a doctor. The older brother hugs the younger one anxiously, checking if everything is okay with him after what he has been through. The mother holds her son tightly to her with tears in her eyes, and the father smiles with relief as he watches the family reunite. The father asks his daughter if she is hurt, and she calmly replies that the barrier protected them from danger. The father is relieved to see that his daughter is okay and considers this the most important thing. The girl, alone, admits to herself that she has been holding back her feelings since her brother's birth. The father suggests returning home to avoid unnecessary noise and asks that the doctor examine his daughter at the estate. At sunset, the girl turns around, hearing someone calling her name. The boy thanks her for saving him, noting that it was only thanks to her that everyone got out unharmed, and she modestly replies that she was simply doing her duty. Her friends admire her actions and happily offer to become true friends from now on. The girl hears the friendship proposal with surprise and slight excitement, not expecting such a turn of events. She admits that she won't be a fun friend, but her interlocutor replies with a smile that he's not looking for a fun friend, but a cool one. The three children decide to become real friends and meet every day, and Velmati promises to think about it. The girl recalls that at that moment she was truly happy, because for the first time in her life she had friends, and all envy disappeared, giving way to joy. As an adult, she smiles and marvels that this friendship has lasted to this day, calling it a strange turn of fate. She notes that in the original story, her two friends were barely mentioned, but now their connection has become an important part of her life. In her memories, the girl sees one of her friends die in her brother's arms during a tragic explosion at school. Another friend, Sion, struggles to maintain a magical barrier, but is seriously injured and loses a leg. She realizes that their meeting with her changed their fate. Now both are alive and happy, not knowing the same suffering as before. The girl realizes that she unwittingly changed the course of the original plot, giving her friends a new life. All this was possible thanks to the protective barrier left to her by her mother, which she felt as a manifestation of love. Returning home, she is forced to give the magical necklace to her younger brother because the adults believe that the family heir needs protection more than she does, and this decision leaves her bitter. The image of a mother appears in the memories, whose care and magic protected the heroine in difficult moments. The girl sadly notes that now her mother and her entire family are no longer alive, and it no longer matters. One of the friends approaches Velmati cautiously, wanting to know the reason for her changes. He is surprised that she decided to start training with a sword, since she had always avoided it before. Velmati admits that she has finally understood an important truth. She realizes that she is not preventing her brother from following his own path, but on the contrary, it is he who is standing in her way of her own life. The girl, with firm determination, declares that she no longer wants to be held back and dreams of gaining influence in the estate independent of her family. Her friends enthusiastically support her aspirations, promising to help, and she admits that she especially needs Zion's help. She explains that she has mastered the basics, but wants to fill in the gaps in knowledge that she did not acquire in class. She had learned everything she could from Jeffrey over the past 6 months, but now she had nothing more to learn from him. The girl is confident that Sion, a smart and talented magician, will be able to teach her everything else. Zion happily agrees to help, and her friends discuss who is teaching her fencing, showing genuine interest in her development. The young man asks with interest whether the heroine trains with Meldor, and whether Duke Elton knows about it. The girl admits with a slight smile that her father is not aware of her fencing lessons, since he showed no interest in her from the very beginning, and she cannot reveal family secrets even to close friends. She explains that she simply hired a knight to become her teacher, and her interlocutor is surprised at the injustice of the Duke, who devotes all his attention to Meldor. The guy offers to introduce her to his teacher if the current one is not satisfactory, but the girl assures that she is happy with her mentor and now just wants to improve her technique. The interlocutor is surprised by her success, and the heroine herself calmly confirms her progress. Suddenly, she notices a child who has caught her attention and thinks about him. The guy is surprised to learn that Ruspel has appeared in the hall and hurries to make sure that he is not hurt. He asks the boy with concern if he was injured, since he asked him not to come to training today. The girl and the boy greet Ruspel, noting that they haven't seen each other for a long time. The boy excitedly admits that he wants Velmati's autograph because he thinks she's really cool. The older brother guesses with a smile that Ruspel saw their sparring and admits that he wanted to show his best side, but was unable to. The second young man offers Ruspel his autograph, reminding him of his magical abilities, but the boy politely declines. The purple-haired boy sits down shyly across from the two brothers, who are laughing happily and enjoying the moment. The older brother kisses the younger one tenderly, noting that Ruspel is becoming more and more like him. The girl smiles with relief, glad that Mostyn is alive and near his family. She understands that if it weren't for this, Ruspel would now be going through a difficult and dark period in his life. Ruspel Fredo turns out to be a key character in the original story, and his fate plays an important role in the narrative. Ruspel's childhood was filled with loneliness and darkness due to the absence of a family. Duchess Fredo had been in poor health since birth, and after Ruspel's arrival her condition worsened, while 10-year-old Mostyn consoled his bedridden mother. The shock aggravated the Duchess's illness, and she followed Mostyn into exile that same year. Duke Fredo fell into a deep depression after the loss of his wife and son, so he paid little attention to his youngest son, Ruspel. The servants also avoided Ruspel, believing that his birth brought misfortune to the house, which is why the boy grew up in complete solitude. When Ruspel turned 14, a new stage began in his life. He met Nisha and was saved, as if a light had illuminated his life. Although the novel was about raising children, the main character was small, but in the second volume, Ruspel played an important role. The heroine's thoughts begin to anticipate that an important event is about to begin in the second volume. She decides that it will all start when Nisha grows up a little, and puts off thinking about it until later, while the others discuss their younger brother. The girl notes with a smile that she has never met anyone as sweet as her younger brother, and her interlocutor agrees with her. The young man with golden hair happily tells that his younger brother confessed his love to his older brother, and his father was a little upset, but could do nothing about it. The girl with a cold look stops her interlocutor, not wanting to continue the conversation. She explains with a smile why sometimes it's better to remain silent, and the young man sheepishly makes excuses. A man with purple hair shows a child a magic trick, and the boy looks bored, and in the background, the thought of Ruspel's happiness is heard. This time, Mostyn returns home safely after the events in Kenya and happily embraces his mother. The Duchess struggles with her illness for another 4 years, and during this time, Duke Fredo prepares for her departure and greets the funeral calmly. The Duke takes care of his sons, taking on the role of both parents, and now Ruspel grows up in an atmosphere of love and care. The girl, with a slight mockery, reminds the young man of his debt of gratitude, and he reacts to her words with embarrassment, recalling the events in Kenya. The young man justifies himself to the girl, admitting that she often used saving his life as a pretext for long years of exploitation. In the family circle, the older sister makes fun of her brother, and the younger boy complains about injustice, causing smiles in those around him. After a long time, the heroine finally spends a day in peace, promising to fight Mostyn with swords in the future. Returning home, the girl meets a worried maid, who immediately notices a change in her mood. The maid anxiously tries to find the words to explain her concerns. The young man notices Lady Veladi's appearance with alarm, his face expressing surprise and concern. Lady Veladi appears in the stillness of the night, her gaze full of determination and hidden tension. The symphony that Mama and Meldor used to listen to together plays in the hall, and memories fill the atmosphere. The young man explains with excitement that the servants tried to stop someone, but their efforts were in vain due to his persistence. Lady Veladi confidently declares that she will handle the situation and resolutely moves forward, leaving the others behind. Meldor lies carefree on the bench to the music until he is asked to stand up, and the room fills with peace and a slight melancholy. The young man indignantly demands that the music be returned and that the reason for the noise be explained, looking in surprise at the girl who entered. The girl confidently declares that she now runs this place, and the boy objects, reminding that this was his mother's corner. A dispute breaks out between them over the right to the greenhouse, and the boy insists that his sister destroyed everything that was dear to him. Memories take me back to a time when my mother lovingly tended the greenhouse and listened to music, filling the place with special meaning. The girl decides to take charge of the place and asks her brother to listen to music in his room so as not to interfere with her memories. She reminds him that her father has completely entrusted her with this position and demands obedience, not wanting to give in to her brother. The boy indignantly asks if his sister is really going to change the greenhouse to suit her own taste and doubts that his father will allow it. The girl coldly replies that she didn't wait for her father to leave to change everything and accuses her brother of bias. She notices that the boy is irritated because of his mother's upcoming birthday and refuses to be a target for his anger. The girl, with a slight smile, reminds her brother of his recent actions and mentally returns to the meeting with Meldor. The boy says with resentment that while some are training hard, others are spending their time having fun. The girl advises him to finish training and go to Alexander without complaining about his slow progress. The boy angrily clutches his sword, accusing his interlocutor of inaction and parasitism. A sudden movement of the sword makes him wary, and he hears a remark about the need to watch his hands. He indignantly demands to know who has the right to give him orders, not hiding his irritation. The girl warns that she will no longer be soft and demands that he return to the room immediately. She coldly reminds him that no one is obliged to fulfill his wishes and leaves, leaving the boy alone. The girl mentally notes that staying here will only make things worse for him, and suspects that his sudden desire to go to the greenhouse is not accidental. The boy is breathing heavily and looks confused, his body shaking with tension. Someone's hand slams on the door in irritation, demanding attention and intervention. Lady Velati calmly orders the servants to leave Meldor alone and return to their work, considering his behavior to be another tantrum. She is surprised by the boy's persistence, remembering how she has tried unsuccessfully to talk to him over the past 6 months. Meldor, immersed in his studies, ignores her and feels hostility towards her, the reason for which is obvious to the girl. While he spends his days in agonizing training and exercises, she enjoys complete freedom. While others are having carefree fun, Meldor feels like he is the only one devoting himself to his studies, and this makes him rude and harsh in communication. As he grows older, Meldor does not become closer to his sister, although she hoped that conversation would help them understand each other, but these expectations turn out to be in vain. Every time she holds back her irritation, she fears that any display of emotion could cost her the right to manage the estate. Her situation remains precarious, and she finds no words for the one who has ignored her since birth. What she fears most is Meldor's rapprochement with his father, because as long as they live together, the boy can easily win his favor. She puts her dreams on hold and waits for the right moment because her mother's birthday is coming soon. When distance arises between father and son, Meldor will be left unprotected and completely vulnerable. For her, this will be the moment when the boy falls right into her arms, and she is looking forward to this hour. She endures all the difficulties just for the moment when she can implement her plan. Several days pass, and the bright sun shines over the majestic mansion. At a long table in a luxurious hall, 3 people discuss the discovery of an old man who is collecting herbs near a strange cave. The girl is surprised to realize the importance of what she heard and asks a clarifying question. The young man explains that scientists consider the cave to be very dangerous because the ground could collapse. He adds that the mages discovered a large accumulation of natural mana inside the cave. Mana created by man is called magic, and the remaining mana is called natural mana, which flows in a constant stream, like a river. About 50 years ago, in a neighboring kingdom, a cave was discovered where natural mana merged into a lake surrounded by sparkling crystals, and researchers came there. Precious stones like diamonds could be imbued with magic, but the likelihood of finding such in a single mine was extremely low. A neighboring kingdom discovered a mine of magical stones and made a huge profit, as if they had hit the jackpot. Later, several more caves filled with natural mana were found, but they all turned out to be empty, and careless exploration sometimes led to cave-ins. The family owns an iron ore mine where mine carts carry heavy rocks along rails. The sale of the ore brought the family a good fortune, but even valuable magical rubies cannot compare in value to this ore. The family discussed at the table that thanks to the cave they could gain enormous wealth and world fame, so they often gathered for family councils about this. The eldest son, who is the heir, insists on exploring the cave, and the father transfers full power to him. The girl understands that no matter how much she asks, her father will not send her north to explore the cave. The family's grandfather is too old and therefore cannot be chosen for such an important task, since the extraction of precious stones is entrusted only to direct descendants. The girl realizes that her confidence is based on her knowledge of the original story, while for others it seems like a risky adventure. Over family dinner, it is discussed that the potential rewards of gem mining are too great to abandon cave exploration because of the danger. At the table, the girl confidently asserts that if she acts slowly and carefully, there will be no danger, but the young man disagrees. The young man insists that, as in previous cases, an accident could occur during reconnaissance. The girl is surprised by the change in her brother's behavior because before he blindly supported the idea of the research, but now he is decisively against it. The elder brother takes responsibility for the decision and asks everyone to forget about this issue. The girl calmly cuts food, thinking that she expected this outcome because it is difficult for her father to leave the capital. She decides that she will not allow the situation to end this way. A girl in a white dress walks down a dark corridor with a lantern in her hand, lighting her way in the silence of the night. She enters her mother's office, which was sealed with magic and could only be opened by its owner. Memories of her mother come to life. The spirit tells the little girl that she hid everything valuable under the bed, fearing her brother. Remembering the spirit's words, the heroine decides to be the first to find the things her mother left under the bed. She comes to the study, not the bedroom, because her mother spent most of her nights here. The girl forbids cleaning the office so that the servants don't accidentally find hidden things, since the rest of the family doesn't pay attention to this place. The girl finds an ancient diary with magical symbols under the bed, as she expected. She looks at her mother's diary, amazed at its clean cover preserved by magic. It turns out that this diary was started by the mother after moving in with the Elton family, and now it has become her discovery. The girl decides that she will not use the diary for selfish purposes. She opens the diary to find out its contents. Turning the pages, she finally finds what she was looking for. The girl writes in her diary, reflecting on her approaching birthday and the past she left behind in the spirit forest. She remembers how Senyan called her her treasure and predicted that Theodore would also have such a treasure. The heroine is lost in doubt, not understanding how something like this is even possible and not wanting to tell Theodore about something that she herself cannot explain. A realization dawns on her that the treasure the spirit spoke of is Nisha. She recalls how the snow spirit brought Nisha to the capital's estate on her mother's birthday. The girl understands that if she shows her father the diary, he will immediately go north to the spirit forest. If the events change, the snow spirit will travel to the northern estate and meet Nisha for the first time there. As a child, Nessia was very weak and became seriously ill with any change in environment, so after arriving in the capital, she did not get out of bed for a long time. Transporting such a fragile Nisha to the capital would be difficult, so he would have to take care of her in the northern estate. In the original story, it took Nisha 3 years to become a healthy child. During this time, the heroine plans to strengthen her authority and deal with Meldor. She decides that this issue needs to be taken care of as well. A girl finds an ancient magical formula in a diary, which at first glance seems ordinary, but in fact allows one to make a contract with spirits. In the past, using this formula, her mother was able to summon the snow spirit Senyon. The mother continued her research even after moving to the capital, but never completed the formula, and Nessia, having found the diary, was able to finish it. As a result, Nisha managed to form a contract with Senyon, and each spirit, in addition to magic, has a unique gift. Nessia's vibrant energy and strength made her a beloved heroine. The heroine reflects that she does not need such power, because she is more interested in the power of other spirits. The girl decides that now she needs to show what she found to her father, holding the diary in her hands. She finds a red diary with a magical symbol and realizes that everything is in its place, as she expected. Even though she knew where the diary was, she didn't go looking for it on purpose because it made her feel uncomfortable. In her diary, the mother kept a photograph taken on her son's first birthday. The eldest son, seeing this photograph, once again realizes his mother's love and begins to perceive Nisha, who gave him the photo, as his real sister. The heroine reflects on herself, realizing that she was not the eldest son that her mother was proud of, but remained an invisible eldest daughter to her. The mother tenderly holds the baby in her arms, because in the novel there was nothing strange in the fact that she treasured this photo, putting all her love into it. The girl with scarlet eyes decides that it is time to test her guesses. She takes the photograph and, looking at it in the silence of the night, recognizes a familiar face. The girl sadly recalls many painful moments associated with her mother, but among them there were some that weren't so terrible. The mother was bedridden until her death, sitting in her room with a book in her hands. One such day, the girl stood at the door for a long time, not daring to enter, fearing to disturb her mother. Her mother greeted her with an unexpectedly soft and warm voice. They sat together on the bed, discussing disturbing dreams and supporting each other. The mother hugged her daughter, comforting her, and in those days the girl often dreamed of her mother's death. The woman tenderly touches the girl's face, reminding her of the beauty of a smile. The two women sit together on the bed, holding hands, and this becomes the last bright memory of their mother. The girl, looking at the photograph, reflects on the fact that words cannot replace real care and admits that she cannot forget the past. She looks at the old photograph, conflicted and wondering why her mother keeps her so close. The girl realizes that she was only getting the remnants of love and remembers how she once grabbed onto any manifestation of warmth, but now this has changed. She understands that the reason for her strange feelings is the unquenched emotions towards her mother, which still live in her heart. A girl stands by the window in a luxurious room, tormented by conflicting feelings and wanting to get rid of them. The next day, the mansion is illuminated by morning light, foreshadowing new events. She wakes up tired after a restless night, thinking about business and remembering that her father should be in his office. In the hallway, the girl meets a man who has not appeared in the house for a long time and is surprised by his visit. Baron Ricken greets her with a slight smile, reminding her of the past. Memories take her back to her childhood, when the Baron was their teacher, and that is why she feels calm around him. The girl asks why Baron Ricken hasn't gone home yet, and he admits with a tired smile that the Duke is too harsh on his assistants. The Baron, encouraged by kind words, promises to regain his strength and accept help in the form of medicinal herbs and new assistants. He thanks the girl for her concern, bows and leaves, leaving her in the corridor. The library is bustling with activity. The tables are piled high with papers, and the assistants are immersed in endless tasks, which reminds the heroine of the hard work in her past life. One of the assistants, tired and exhausted, is forced to work overtime under the watchful eye of his superiors. The girl notes that if the working conditions are slightly improved, the assistants will gladly come over to her side, and, knocking on the door, she turns to her father. A girl with a book in her hands enters the room, preparing to share an important discovery. The man at the table asks in surprise about the reason for the visit, and the girl says that she wants to show him something important. She places a red diary on the table, explaining that it is her mother's diary, causing the man to be surprised. The man, looking at the diary, recognizes his mother's handwriting and wonders why he had not found this thing among her belongings before. The girl admits that she found the diary in the laboratory, explaining that she could not sleep last night because she missed her mother. A scene emerges in her memory where her father frequently visits her mother's bedroom, especially missing her as her birthday approaches. The man is surprised that something important could still be found in the lab and notes the girl's efforts. The girl advises her father to look at the diary, which she read a little the day before. She reports that she folded down the corner of the page to make it easier to find the right place. A man, leafing through a diary, suddenly comes across a mention of treasure. The girl notes to herself that her father is hesitant, as she expected, and remembers that at the end of the diary, her mother wrote something important about Nisia. The girl assumes that her mother left something valuable in the north and wonders if they should find it. The girl anxiously reflects on the fact that she does not know what treasure her mother left behind and fears that someone else might get it first. She remembers that the snow spirit knows about the treasure and wonders if she can trust him and leave things as they are. The man excitedly orders that Baron Ricken and Rover be called immediately. The girl agrees with relief, realizing that her father is ready to go north without delay. At the family council, the exploration of the northern caves is discussed, and the heroine is confident that her father will support this decision. The father realizes that he urgently needs to go north, and the discovery of the cave becomes a timely and convenient pretext for him. The girl in the corridor gives the order to immediately call Baron Ricken and Rover, and the maid readily agrees to carry out the order. She notes with satisfaction that everything is going according to plan, and understands that the time for her plan has almost come. After handing over the diary to the man, he discusses his next steps with two advisors. An escort of knights is hastily assembled, and for the journey they even have to rent a teleportation circle from the magic tower. The northern castle is in turmoil when it becomes known that the head of the family will arrive there in person. The man reminds the young man of his status as the sole heir and eldest son, urging him to remember his sense of responsibility and the gravity of his situation. The boy happily promises to keep his father's instructions in his heart, his eyes shining with sincerity. The father, dressed in a luxurious cloak, gives final instructions to his children, and they respectfully agree. The girl, with a slight smile, assures that she will manage the estate until her father returns, feeling responsible for the house. The father gives the order to open the gates in preparation for departure, and the servants respectfully carry out his orders. A man on horseback leaves the estate accompanied by knights, leaving his family outside the gates. After his father's departure, the boy distrusts his sister's words about her role as the eldest, doubting her ability to manage the house. The boy walks irritably down the corridor next to his sister, accusing her of being useless and reproaching her for being frivolous. He, with feigned politeness, announces that he is returning to his room, advising his sister to get busy. The maid happily reports to the girl that the teleportation circle to the north has been successfully activated, confirming that her request has been fulfilled. The girl, with a satisfied smile, realizes that she can now act according to her own plan. The boy indignantly asks why his sister burst into his room, emphasizing that she was busy. The girl, standing in her brother's room, ironically remarks that he should learn to call her sister. The boy angrily demands that his sister leave his room immediately, clenching his fists in irritation. The girl stops her brother with one movement of her hand, and he realizes with surprise that he cannot move from the spot. She comes closer with a smile, noticing that her brother is being capricious due to excess energy, and offers him to let it out. The boy backs away in panic, begging his sister not to come closer. He desperately repeats that she should not come near him, his voice trembling with fear. A girl with a mysterious smile invites her brother to spend some time together after a long separation. A sunny day illuminates the facade of the mansion, and from the windows comes the desperate voice of a boy who loudly admits his mistake, filling the courtyard with cheerful notes of reconciliation. In a luxurious hall, a young man abruptly pushes another man away to protect him from danger. A woman in a green dress gives orders to a maid, acting as if she is the mistress of the place. The boy turns to the woman with indignation, clearly dissatisfied with her behavior. The woman with a cold gaze reacts with surprise to his intervention. The boy, a little confused, turns to the woman, calling her sister, and she calmly asks what's going on. Anxiety is growing inside the boy. He feels unusual pressure from his sister, who previously seemed weaker to him. In the hall, servants and maids are busy rearranging the furniture, and in the boy's thoughts there is anxiety and resentment towards his sister, who used him and even raised her hand to him. Clenching his fist, the boy decides that despite his father's consent, he must stop his sister, remembering his parting words before leaving. The memory of his strict father reminds Meldor that he is the only heir and eldest son of the Elton family. The boy decisively declares that he is responsible for the estate and demands an explanation from his sister. The sister replies with cold calm that everything is already visible, and the boy insists on finding out what she is doing with his mother's greenhouse. The woman in the green dress looks at her brother with surprise and irritation. The girl in the green dress lets the young man go with cold confidence, inviting him to go about his business while he stands before her, holding back his emotions. The boy slowly walks down the corridor, his face expressing confusion and inner tension. Overwhelmed by humiliation, he quickens his pace, mentally outraged at the way he is being treated and remembering that just recently his sister did not dare to contradict him. He runs down a long corridor, remembering that the changes began after his father left for the north, and he still clearly remembers that terrible day. A woman with an enigmatic smile and a commanding gaze demands that Meldor call her by her new title, emphasizing the change in their relationship. The boy, kneeling down, calls her sister with difficulty, and she, enjoying his submissiveness, pretends not to have heard. The boy cries out his sister's name in despair, barely holding back tears and resentment, mentally accusing her of cruelty. The sister raises her hand threateningly, and the boy closes himself in fear, not understanding what will happen next. He begs his sister to stop, and she watches his fear with a cold smile. The boy, wiping away his tears, admits to himself that he no longer loves his sister and even begins to hate her. The sister, feigning concern, warns him that she will turn the gramophone on again if he does not obey, and the boy, sobbing, agrees. Overwhelmed with fear, the boy cries out his sister's name, clutching the pillow tightly to himself. The boy, clutching his pillow, seethes with humiliation and cannot understand why his sister is so persistently trying to teach him. He admits that he was rude to Velati, but considers it quite natural. Memories take him back to the past, where his sister enjoyed freedom and socializing with aristocrats while he remained on the sidelines. He recalls how his mother always supported him, assuring him that his dissatisfaction was normal. In his life, Velati was the easiest target because while he was basking in his mother's love, she stood aside and watched him. Even when they quarreled, his sister gave in to him and took care of him, and his parents always scolded her and not him, because he was the child who never took offense. Sometimes the boy felt sorry for Vladi, especially when he returned home late at night after training. He thinks that perhaps it was precisely because of this pity that he allowed himself to be rude to his sister. But now those times are in the past. Vladi appears in the house, changed and frightening like a demoness. From that day on, the boy tried to resist her power, but in response he received only a harsh upbringing. Even his parents were never as strict with him as his sister became now. He cannot understand how Vladi is capable of treating him so cruelly. The boy begins to suspect that his sister was hiding her power and waiting for the right moment, and his father's sudden departure seems suspicious to him. He recalls that his father was against exploring the cave but suddenly changed his mind and left. In his mind, Vladi appears as a demon capable of overthrowing even the Demon King, and he regrets that he is still too young to oppose her. The boy calls the servant and asks where Rover is. He thinks with irritation that Rover spends all his time near Vladi, which makes him suspicious. Reminiscing about the past, the boy notes that Emily has always been Vladi's maid, and Rover served their family even before he became the head butler. The boy is perplexed by how his sister managed to win Rover's trust and decides to take a desperate step, seeing no other way out. Inside, he firmly decides that the time has come to end Vladi Elton. He hands the letter to his servant, ordering him to send it north by the fastest courier. In his heart, the boy is sure that with his father's return, everything will change, and he will be able to take revenge on his sister. A letter with a seal is sent to the addressee to convey important news. Vladi reads the letter and notes with a slight smile that she finds its contents amusing. The girl in the green dress receives a report from the servant and orders him to inform her of all of Meldor's actions from now on, and the servant obediently agrees. She is pleased to realize that all the servants are now under her control, although Meldor thinks that only Rover has gone over to her side. The girl throws the letter into the fireplace, realizing that now every servant in the house puts her orders above Meldor's orders. After his father's departure, Meldor never dared to object to her, and she watches his helplessness with triumph. She is surprised that Meldor has held out so long, since she expected him to write a letter to his father in 3 days, and now she is wondering whether she should give him a little encouragement. The girl admits that if Meldor were older, she would crush him with force, but remembering all the years of bullying, she believes that this would not be enough. Meldor, still an elementary school student, gets his last chance to improve. The girl in the green dress wonders if Meldor is truly evil by nature or if his behavior is caused by stress and decides to find out. She hands the letter to a servant with instructions to send it north and receives confirmation. With a thoughtful look, she remembers that her mother's birthday has already passed and reflects on her father's meeting with a certain Nessia. The arrival of a new girl suddenly makes the father think, and now the likelihood that he will agree to the request becomes very high. The girl eagerly anticipates the expression on Meldor's face when he receives the reward he deserves. Several days pass, and finally a response from the father arrives at the mansion. The girl reads the letter, noticing that her father's heart has become softer, and he now counts on her. She asks the maid where Meldor is and learns that he is training in the fencing hall. A boy with a wooden sword is training tiredly in the yard, and in his eyes one can see the anticipation of an important conversation. A young man with a sword diligently practices on a wooden dummy under the supervision of a man with green hair who demands that he straighten his back. A dark-haired girl watches the training, musing that Meldor is not cut out for fencing and his posture is still awkward despite years of training. The boy turns around in surprise and asks his sister why she came. A man and a girl greet each other in the courtyard, exchanging polite phrases. The girl, holding a letter in her hand, smiles at her brother, confirming that it is a letter from their father, and the boy excitedly asks about the contents. The boy eagerly reaches for the letter, insisting that he be allowed to read it. The green-haired man is outraged by the boy's behavior, reminding him of the knightly way. He sternly points out that even in the family, etiquette must be observed, and the boy lowers his gaze in embarrassment. The girl with the letter in her hands reflects that Meldor always obeys adults, has no talent for fencing, but sincerely admires knights. She asks him not to be too harsh with Meldor, explaining that the boy has been separated from his father for such a long time for the first time and is worried. The girl hands over the letter and invites Sir Brooks to read it. Sir Brooks opens the letter with surprise, realizing that it would be better to find out the news for himself. At the library desk, it is discussed that Sir Brooks sent regular reports to his father and that interference was minimal. Father, having started to take care of Nesia, began to take the upbringing of children more seriously, although he had previously been soft with Meldor. Sir Brooks smiles as he thanks Meldor for his hard work and declares the training session over. The girl thanks Sir Brooks for his good work and asks to be left alone with Meldor. Meldor is confused and surprised by the changes and hears that he will no longer have to go through harsh training. The girl hands Meldor a letter, inviting him to read it himself. A man, sitting at a table and holding a letter, reflects on how Meldor's training is too harsh for his age. He decides it's time to open up more possibilities for the boy by watching him play joyfully with magic. Meldor holds the letter in his hands with surprise and excitement, filled with hope and anxiety. A woman with a serious expression advises Meldor to cut down on his sword training and focus more on magic. Meldor, holding back tears, assures that he is not crying, and the woman calmly says that there is nothing shameful in tears. The woman claims that she was teaching him discipline, and the boy indignantly asks if he is not ashamed to treat his younger brother like that. The girl, with a cold expression on her face, claims that she is not ashamed to reproach the boy if he behaves stupidly, and he indignantly denies it. The girl's inner voice admits that she may have gone too far for the sake of discipline, but believes that the father should be in charge of upbringing, and the boy desperately asks for forgiveness. She looks into the distance, thinking that now everything depends only on the boy himself. The boy, confused and offended, asks why he sent the letter, because he is sure that his sister hates him. The girl, with a slight smile, suggests that perhaps she is much more sentimental than she appears. She invites the boy to discuss the new schedule with the teachers and promises to respect his choice, and he watches her leave in surprise. Meldor's sword training was greatly reduced, while his magical training became much more intense. Even Sir Brooks realized that Meldor's sword training was making him irritable. A maid enters the girl's room while she is sitting with a letter in her hands. An elegantly crafted letter arrives from the Imperial Palace, causing surprise. The girl, looking at the letter, guesses that the winter ball season is approaching. Winter has always been the harshest time of the year, when commoners suffered from cold and hunger, and aristocrats went south. In the northern lands where Elton's house is located, winters were particularly harsh, but that is now a thing of the past. Kenyu Decardal appeared in all her royal power and grandeur. When memories of a past life returned, it became clear that this world was like any other where people live. The continent's history was filled with wars and chaos, and magic served as the main weapon and defense. 200 years ago, spirits appeared, intervening in human wars and calling for an end to senseless conflicts. Thanks to the intervention of the spirits, all nations were forced to conclude an unbreakable magical peace treaty. Magic became an academic science, and magicians founded magic towers where they engaged in personal research. A new magician has appeared with an unusual philosophy that differs from the generally accepted norms. She combined magic and science to create practical magical technologies, and magic took on new forms. The first invention that came about through the fusion of magic and science was the magic lamp. Gririka was not only a mage, but also an aristocrat of high status. Many of the tower's elders were former battle mages loyal to the imperial family, so cooperation quickly developed. Among her inventions, the most famous were the internal plumbing and heating systems, which changed the appearance of the city. Thanks to these innovations, it has become much easier for city residents to use water in their daily lives. Sanitary conditions have improved markedly, and the incidence of diseases and epidemics has been significantly reduced. The princess's popularity among the common people skyrocketed, and she was greeted with enthusiasm in the streets. She could have claimed the imperial throne if she had not had 3 older brothers. The princess allowed only her political allies to use her inventions, and even among the aristocrats, the lives of those who were with her became better. The princess, with a sly smile, realizes that the laws prohibit monopoly only for the emperor, but not for her. There had never been a princess in history who developed technology and ran a business on her own, so she took advantage of a loophole in the law. In winter, when everyone usually sat at home and waited for spring, her letter became a harbinger of change. She installed powerful heating systems in the palace ballroom, inviting only allies and throwing lavish parties every day. The aristocrats who attended these balls boasted endlessly about it, and some even made money by selling items from the ball. The princess's allies enjoyed the luxury and benefits of attending balls, while the excluded aristocrats could not accept the fact that they were left out. Eventually, even the princess's opponents began to join her faction one after another, and in the south, only the Aglar continued to support the crown prince. She eventually became the first woman to ascend the throne, surrounded by support and admiration. House Elton was the first to support Princess Gririka in spreading heating systems in the north, so the winter ball became a special event for their house. Usually father attended this ball, but now he was busy taking care of Nisha. The girl with black hair reflects on how she has not appeared in society for a long time, first because of her mother's illness and funeral, and then because of training. She recalls that she used to play a central role in social life as the only noble daughter of the empire. Time dragged on slowly, and a few days later a luxurious carriage pulled up to the house. Under a blue umbrella, amidst falling snow, a young man with purple hair greets a girl in a luxurious outfit. The confused servant wonders why he is not holding the umbrella, since it is his responsibility, and the young man explains that he simply felt he had to do it. Some people, when thinking to themselves, note that Zion has an attractive appearance, intelligence, and a wonderful character, and this opinion is not connected with friendship, but with sincere admiration. Another young man joins the group and happily notes how much snow has fallen, and also emphasizes that everyone is dressed according to the dress code. The blonde says with a smile that the clothes they chose suit them very well and is glad that they dressed up like that. The three friends walk together along a snowy alley, enjoying the unity and the dress code they have chosen, because for Moston, a sense of belonging has always been especially important. Friends walk together along a snowy alley, feeling the unity of their company and rejoicing in mutual trust. One of them notices that it is too cold outside and urges the others to hurry inside. Entering the luxurious hall, the trio takes off their outerwear and prepares for the reception. The conversation turns to Brother Veladi, and it becomes clear that he is completely immersed in the study of magic. Veladi smiles and assures that her presence is important enough that her brother's absence doesn't matter. Inside the hall, Veladi meets her friends, and their joyful meeting fills the atmosphere with warmth and light. The friends are sympathetic to Veladi's situation and are happy to see her in person, offering to sit down and chat. Veladi says goodbye to the boys to join the girls and promises to meet later. An exquisite meal appears on the table, and one of the girls asks how Veladi has been doing. Veladi, holding a glass, receives a compliment on her dress and a question about coordinating outfits with the lords. The girls sit on the sofas, engage in animated conversation, and Veladi notes her popularity among her peers. At this time, the young aristocrats admire the friendly company of Veladi, Moston, and Sion, each of whom has his own admirers. Adult aristocrats enjoy communicating with Moston because his bright and friendly smile makes them sympathetic. Veladi and her friend notice that Zion is also getting attention. Veladi's friend is surprised that her guesses about Zion turned out to be correct. Zion finds himself in the spotlight of girls who admire his incredible popularity. The reason for such popularity is believed to be his striking resemblance to the Duchess, the most beautiful woman in the empire. Veladi reflects that Zion's gentle nature endears him to everyone, and she feels a special connection with those who try to get close to him. The girls enthusiastically give gifts to Zion, admitting that they spent the whole night embroidering a scarf. Thinking about him, one of the fans hands Zion a perfume created especially for him, asking him to use only it. A battle breaks out between the fans for the opportunity to be closer to Zion, each trying to stand out. Veladi reflects that if she were him, she would simply ignore everyone, because Zion has such a difficult life, and recalls how one day his fans approached her. The girls ask Lady Elton how close she is to Zion and whether there is already talk of an engagement. Veladi understands that they were trying to lure her into a trap with such questions. After one glance from the heroine, the girls in luxurious dresses hastily retreat, unable to withstand her confidence. Veladi muses that if she and Sion had similar gentle personalities, they wouldn't be able to get along so well, as her aura is completely different. One of the girls enthusiastically invites Veladi to social events, telling him about the recently renovated tea room on their estate. Veladi confirms with a slight smile that she was indeed planning to return to social life. Her friends are delighted with her promise and invite Veladi to come to them next time. Veladi happily agrees, and the atmosphere in the room is one of friendliness and lively conversation. Veladi notices someone staring at her and becomes wary, sensing something familiar. The girl in the blue dress recognizes Veladi after a long separation and wonders why their meetings always end in a quarrel. Veladi coldly reflects that this person does not deserve her attention unless she is someone's lapdog. A memory comes to mind that this girl is the princess's cousin, who married the crown prince several years ago. Although she didn't play a major role in the original story, Velody now keeps a close eye on her actions. It turns out that her hobby is manipulating aristocrats, subordinating them to her will. Even after joining the imperial family, the girl continues to maintain her influence by using her cousin. In the past, the heroine tried to compensate for loneliness in the family by seeking approval from others. The aristocrats, tired of the princess's control, sought a new leader, and the heroine readily accepted them, expanding her influence. High society was divided into two factions, one led by the heroine, the other by the princess, and the princess's attempts to win over the older ladies were unsuccessful. The older generation watched the rivalry of the young with interest, without interfering in their struggle. Over a glass of wine, the heroine asks with a smile how the princess has been doing lately, causing a slight tension in her interlocutors. One of the girls notes that while one side of society is absent, the other is gaining strength. But with the return of Velody, the balance will soon be restored. The friends say that the princess recently invited them to a tea party, and they assure that Velody will soon receive an invitation as well. With a smile and a glass of wine, Velody admits that he is looking forward to this moment. Despite the official status of the event, everyone understands that the princess will never invite Velody. Velody learns that in her absence, the princess tried to lure her close friends to her side. Showing concern, Velody supports those who have managed to escape the princess's influence. By showing care and support, the heroine strengthens her image and acquires loyal allies among the aristocracy. Thanks to the good relationship between the imperial family and the Elton Duchy, their confrontation remains merely a personal conflict. The princess smiles and invites Velody to join her circle. She promises to make Velody her chief lady-in-waiting, offering her a special position at court. Velody notes with irony that the offer to become a servant for the daughter of a ducal house, who does not have imperial blood, sounds funny. Realizing that their statuses are equal, the princess realizes that it is impossible to punish Velody, and she does not intend to bow her head to anyone except members of her family. The heroine, with a glass of wine, recalls how her interlocutor's face changed after her answer. The news of the return of Prince Kilian, who studied in the Megala Empire, spreads through the hall. The girls at the table are surprised, discussing whether the prince has really returned, and confirm this with rumors from influential relatives. One of the girls wonders why high society is reacting so calmly to the prince's return, and the others agree that it is strange. The heroine recalls the name of Kilian Ellerman Decaril and his departure to study at a young age. Despite the lack of common interests, the heroine is worried that Kilian has deviated from the original course of history. In the original story, Prince Kilian remained on the sidelines, not interfering with the events happening around him. The hero reflects on the reasons why Prince Kilian went to study abroad, leafing through the pages of the book and remembering the past. A girl in a luxurious dress thoughtfully analyzes why the hero's actions differ from the original story, and almost forgets about what is important when she hears his name. The young Duke of Aglar enters the room, and the girl is surprised to meet him after a long separation. The young Duke, with a friendly smile, asks for a moment of attention. 2 glasses of wine clash in a toast to the return of the flower of high society after a long absence. The girl notes with a smile that Casper has always liked his old-fashioned manner of speech. Perhaps that is why older ladies love him. Against the backdrop of a blooming garden, a young man with purple hair appears, who is Zion's older brother and the future Duke of Aglar. The girl reflects that the two have never been close, and she herself does not feel much of a connection with him, so their communication is usually limited to formal greetings. At the reception, the girl thanks the young Duke for his greeting and asks why he approached her. She guesses that we are talking about a member of the imperial family, because Casper is the faithful right hand of the crown prince. The Duke reminds her that she only has a few years left until she reaches adulthood and advises her to start making connections now. He offers to introduce his younger brother to Meldor, noting that Velody is a caring older sister who always thinks about her brother. Casper perfectly understands the hidden meaning of his interlocutor's words, but maintains a carefree expression because he has always been distinguished by his dexterity and quick reaction in politics. For a long time, Casper had been trying to win the Elton Duchy over to the Crown Prince's side, so his interest had always been directed towards Meldor, not her. The return of the true claimant to the throne, Prince Kilian, raises questions, but Casper does not seem to see him as a threat. He notices that there has been a change in power in the Elton household, which does not escape his attention. Now that there had been a role reversal in the family, the aristocrats began to treat her differently since she and Meldor had recently switched places. The girl guesses that there are spies in their house, and the incident with William left an unpleasant impression on her. The doors swing open and the Emperor and Empress, rulers of the Empire, are announced into the hall with a solemn cry. The Crown Prince, Crown Princess, and Princess then arrive, attracting the attention of everyone present with their appearance. The imperial family greets the guests from the balcony, expressing their joy at their presence at the winter ball and hoping that everyone will enjoy the celebration. A young man with purple hair invites the girl to meet the crown prince, but she internally resists, not wanting to suddenly get involved in political intrigue. The girl reflects on the fact that the crown prince's policies are successful, but for some reason she cannot trust him. The young man reminds her with a smile that a meeting with the crown prince is inevitable, but promises to be there to support her. A servant addresses a girl in a luxurious dress, formally calling her Lady Velmati Elton. The young man with purple hair reacts to what is happening with slight awkwardness, trying to hide his embarrassment. He admits that today is clearly not his day and promises to introduce Velmati another time, asking her to wait a little. Velmati, with a mysterious smile, wonders if the young duke really thinks she is suitable for the proposed role. The servant invites the girl to come in, and she, without hesitation, leaves, leaving her companion in slight confusion. Velmati greets the imperial family with dignity, introducing herself as a daughter of the House of Elton. The imperial family meets Velmati, and the emperor, reminiscing about the past, addresses her informally as the daughter of an old friend. The little princess greets Lady Elton with joy, beaming with a sincere smile. Velmati responds politely to the princess, apologizing for her being in the emperor's arms and explaining her haste by her preparations for the ball. The emperor allows his daughter to go and rest, but she curiously asks to stay and listen to the conversation with the guest. The empress gently explains to her daughter that the emperor needs to discuss important matters with Velmati and invites her into the room, as it is already late. The princess agrees and, holding her mother's hand, leaves the throne room. The emperor proudly notes that his daughter is an amazing child, possessing intelligence and maturity beyond her years. He says that having such a perceptive princess is a blessing for the entire nation, and regrets that she and Velmati are not the same age, because then they could have become good friends. Velmati agrees with a slight smile, thinking to himself that you don't have to be the same age to be friends. Several years pass, and Princess Hera finds a best friend in Nisha, as was destined in the original story. Velmati understands that building a relationship with the princess is much more profitable because she has an excellent character and abilities. The emperor has not yet revealed his true intentions, and Velmati recalls that, in the original, everything developed in a similar way. Two girls stroll through the garden, discussing the tense relationship between the brothers and the emperor caused by recent events. One of them admits that, although she received a promise of support, she is still not sure of the sincerity of these words. The friend is surprised because the emperor always highly valued her abilities and believes that for such a girl it would be a waste of time to simply get married. The red-haired girl thanks him for his support and says that the emperor has also expressed regrets recently, believing that he should have created a more solid foundation for her support. Meanwhile, another heroine recalls the last episode she read, reflecting on how the emperor has long been looking for a faction capable of supporting the princess. At the reception, the Duke assures the Emperor that the North has always been a reliable support for the Empire since the previous Empress was a princess, and emphasizes his family's loyalty to the dynasty. Memories take the heroine back to a time when loyalty was given to only one member of the imperial family. The Emperor recalls with a smile how the late Empress valued the fortitude of the North, which was not succumb to even the harshest winds. The heroine thoughtfully repeats to herself the words about Northern stability, realizing their hidden meaning. She understands that the real reason the North remains important even after the war is because of its rich iron ore deposits, which generate income. The leader of the Northerners reflects that Princess Hera is too young to know about such things, but the Emperor cannot ignore material circumstances, and therefore puts pressure on her to bring her closer to the princess. The heroine wonders why the Emperor asks her to support the princess, as the Elton family did in the past, since such issues are usually discussed with the head of the family. The heroine carefully expresses her concern that the princess's attachment to the North could cause misunderstandings, and the Emperor listens carefully to her words. she evaluates the situation internally, deciding for herself how best to proceed. Two young aristocrats notice that Velmati is suddenly looking in their direction and are surprised by her attention. Velmati quickly pulls himself together, hiding his true emotions behind a composed expression. With a slight smile, she suggests that the emperor pay attention to other heirs of the great houses in order to avoid excessive emphasis on her person. Scion Aglar, second son of the House of Aglar, introduces himself, ready for new acquaintances and the development of relations between the houses. The emperor agrees with interest to talk with the young lords, and Velmati assures that both young men have excellent character. The girl notes with a smile that the emperor will certainly like these young people, and this will help him easily tell the princess about their merits. The emperor laughs sincerely, amused by what is happening. The young lords enthusiastically promise to brighten up His Majesty's evening, confirming Velmati's words about their busyness and activity. Velmati asks permission to speak with the emperor alone, and he notes that he knows about their friendship. The emperor agrees with a smile, looking forward to how the young guests will entertain him. The evening ball at the palace is shrouded in a mysterious atmosphere, and someone notes with interest that this event promises to be much more exciting than expected. In a luxurious living room, several aristocrats are engaged in animated conversation with a man in a blue cloak sitting in the center. A young blonde man approaches a man in blue with a smile, offering to perform a song for him and receives approval. The girl in the burgundy dress thinks ironically that this guy would quickly make a career in the modern world thanks to his ability to flatter. The meeting with the emperor ends late at night, when the rest of the aristocrats have long since gone home. A girl in a fur cape steps out onto a snowy terrace, reacting warily to an unexpected sound. She notices a man approaching and wonders who could have appeared at such a late hour. The girl notices with surprise that she did not see this young man at the ball and looks at him carefully among the snowflakes. Before her stands Prince Kilian, recently returned from abroad, surrounded by radiance and blue flowers. On the snowy terrace, the girl introduces herself to the prince, bowing her head respectfully. She says with a smile that she simply heard about his return to the empire, noting that red hair is a distinctive feature of the imperial family. The prince, with a slight smile, notes her insight and says that he would definitely have come to the ball if he had known of her presence. The girl answers calmly, not attaching any particular importance to their meeting, but a slight wariness can be seen in her gaze. A young man with fiery hair, full of interest, dreams of getting to know the heroine better, his gaze soft and thoughtful. The girl with dark hair and ruby eyes smiles, feeling that this day is truly special. Images of Caspar, the Emperor, and Kilian flash through her mind, as if all the important figures in her life had gathered together. She recalls how she immediately understood the true intentions of her recent act, adjusting her luxurious red fox fur scarf. The young man remarks that this scarf perfectly matches her eyes and the color of her hair, his smile sparkling in the night. The image of a cunning red fox, which is smarter than other animals and sometimes deliberately catches people's eye, comes to mind. After a long period of observation, the cunning red fox emerges from the shadows of the forest to meet the girl, confident that he can deceive her. A half-magical creature, the fox pretends to be an ordinary beast and acts cute, although her true goal is human blood. As soon as a person loses his vigilance, the fox suddenly attacks, sinking its sharp teeth into the hand and causing serious wounds. On a snowy terrace, a girl and a boy discuss the story they heard, and a feeling of unease hangs in the air. The heroine's thoughts flash with confidence that she is capable of dealing with her rival as easily as she once did with the fox for this scarf. The young man freezes in thought, unable to find words after what he heard. On the snowy terrace, the young man looks at Lady Elton with admiration, and her words make him want to get closer. A luxurious carriage approaches their conversation, breaking the secluded atmosphere of the winter evening. The girl, with a slight smile, says that it is already late and is about to leave the ball, and the young man watches her with surprise. The young man, smiling shyly, offers to meet her in person next time, if she doesn't mind. The memory of the rumors about his frivolity flashes through the girl's mind, and she understands that they were not in vain. She reflects that if she didn't remember her past life, his proposal might have excited her. The girl, with a cold smile, informs him that she has no free time this winter, reminding him of his long-standing desire to get closer. The prince admits that his interest in Lady Elton is not accidental, as people of their circle rarely become close without ulterior motives. The young man listens in surprise as the girl suggests postponing their meeting until spring, when it gets warmer. She leaves, reminding him that he should be ready to lay his cards on the table by the next meeting, and says goodbye until they meet again. The prince doubtfully wonders if he feels anything when he looks at her. The girl calmly replies that she doesn't feel anything and advises him to return to the palace as it's cold outside. The girl is surprised by an unexpected meeting with Prince Killian, noting many suspicious traits in him. The prince hides his true intentions, but his attractiveness and voice are capable of causing excitement. His good looks make him popular, but that's not enough to win the affection of Megala's proud aristocracy. The twin princesses, who are famous for their pride in the empire, are especially distrustful of him. The girl feels that she should have felt something and is at a loss to guess the secret that the prince is hiding. She decides to start preparing for an internal cleanse, suddenly noticing that she can't find the thing she needs. A girl in a dark room finds what she was looking for and freezes in relief with a lamp in her hands. A satisfied and mysterious smile appears on her face as she approaches her goal. There's an old stuffed animal lying on the table among the papers, and she knows it's just what she needs. A sharp knife appears in her hand, ready for decisive action. She cuts the toy open and the stuffing spills out of the torn belly, revealing the item hidden inside. Among the cotton wool, the girl finds a ring, mentally noting that her grandfather really left behind a lot of interesting things. Unlike his cold father, my grandfather was always a cheerful person who loved pranks and holidays. This toy turned out to be part of one of the events associated with the grandmother, who had already passed away. The problem was that my grandmother was just as cool and reasonable as my father. Over tea in the garden, she recalls that it has become fashionable to hide a ring inside a toy as a surprise. The father considers such pranks stupid because it is easier to give the ring directly without disappointing the person. He wonders why it has become popular and admits that he doesn't understand young people today. After Nesha was adopted by the ducal family, she became close to Meldor by playing hide-and-seek with him. During one of the games, they found a staircase to the basement and discovered a toy there, which they then showed to their grandfather, who happened to be in the estate. The grandfather, seeing the ring, remembers the past and asks Nessia to carefully guard this family heirloom. And later, Nessia gives the ring to the heir on his birthday, passing on the family heirloom. As a result, the last owner of the ring is the eldest son, who notes that this is an unusual piece of jewelry. The girl cautiously calls out to someone in the room, and a maid approaches her. In a luxurious room, a lady in a lilac dress demands that her maid lie, but she is confused and asks for forgiveness if she did something wrong. The maid, frightened and confused, wonders whether her mistress was too strict with her. A lady with a piercing gaze asks a maid about her crush on one of the servants, causing her to become confused and panicked. The maid vehemently denies her feelings, and the lady notes to herself that because of her youth, the maid does not know how to lie. The lady asks if the maid noticed anything suspicious among the servants, and she asks again in surprise. The maid thinks, trying to remember something important. The maid reports with slight excitement that she did not see anyone suspicious. The lady smiles and allows the maid to leave, and she meekly agrees. The lady reflects on the ring, remembering that her grandfather was an extravagant man and would not have given her an ordinary piece of jewelry. The memory shows an image of a woman with long silver hair, holding a magical spirit treasure ring in her hand. The lady admits that she wanted to use the ring to find the spy and recalls how her mother fell ill last summer. Despite all measures, someone still dared to betray the Elton house. The lady, looking confidently at the ring on her hand, decides that with its help, it will be easier for her to find the spy. She realizes that the moment has come to attract observers and calls the maid. The lady asks Emily if she has ever revealed information about Elton's house and receives assurances of loyalty. With a sly smile, the lady orders that several gossipy people be gathered together in the evening and brought to the drawing room, specifying that any of the estate's employees will do. The maid is surprised by such an order, but receives instructions to carry out everything discreetly. Emily confirms with slight excitement that she understands everything. The lady in the blue dress with a cold smile assesses the people gathered in front of her, wondering if they are the ones she was waiting for. In the spacious living room, the most talkative servants of the estate line up in front of the lady, and she, satisfied, dismisses the maid. The lady asks the assembled company with a serious expression whether any of them have told outsiders about the affairs of the Elton house. The servants, frightened and agitated, justify themselves, assuring that they never divulged the estate's secrets. The lady, tired of their violent reaction, notes to herself that for spies these people are too easily swayed by emotions. She gestures for them to come closer, preparing to continue her interrogation. The lady with a sly smile reflects on the fact that there is a traitor in the estate, and she is collecting evidence. One of the servants reacts to her words with confusion and anxiety, not knowing what to expect next. The servants accept the assignment with enthusiasm, rejoicing that they have finally received an important task. The lady orders the rumors to begin spreading from tomorrow and dismisses the servants, pleased with their readiness. She notes to herself that these people would not make good spies, but they are perfect as bait. Despite the exaggerations, the servants are happy to spread rumors, because for them it is one of the few entertainments. The magnanimous head of the house, Elton, tolerated the gossip, realizing that it was impossible to keep track of all the conversations. Even if a drop of information or rumor leaked out, it did not go unnoticed. The head of the house was obliged to find the offender, regardless of whether the oversight was accidental or not, so even the most talkative servants were careful outside the estate. One of the servants reacts to the spreading rumors with distrust and alarm, not believing them to be true. He is confused and tries to comprehend what he has heard, not understanding how this could have happened. The servants begin to talk about a traitor in their ranks, and rumors quickly spread throughout the estate. One of the servants notes with alarm that the situation is much worse because someone deliberately leaked the information. The thought that there really is a spy among them rings in the mind of another servant with horror. A frightened young man tries to convince others not to talk about the spies so as not to stir up fear. The maids discuss how even an accidental mistake is punishable, but if someone deliberately spreads rumors, it is a real horror. The internally shocked servant cannot believe that he could have been discovered so quickly because he was careful. He remembers how he told about the defeat of Meldor's heir and now understands that this was the cause of suspicion. Weladi Elton, who has remained in the shadows for a long time, begins to show her true power, and the observer has an uneasy premonition. Not just a quarrel, but a conflict that changes the order of succession breaks out between brother and sister. Weladi Elton turns out to be a dangerous person, which becomes obvious to those around him. Some hope that the other side will use the information received wisely. One is reminded of the tragedy of Lady Dohemia, who could have avoided a senseless death if she had not been connected to the ducal family. The desire to avenge Lady Dohemia becomes so strong that the man is ready to do anything for it. The maids discuss how no one knows who the spy is, but they assume that he is carrying out orders from a member of the imperial family. The servant in the shadows is amazed that even the knights and maids have recognized who is behind him, despite his caution. The girls at the lingerie counter are sharing rumors, and one of them admits that she heard everything from Lady Veladi, who is going to get irrefutable evidence of espionage. The spy is sure that there is no evidence to be found since he hid everything long ago with the help of magic, but he is worried about how Veladi Elton learned about his connections with the imperial family. He thinks back to the winter ball, wondering if she revealed something then. Despite rumors of the emperor's favor towards Veladi, the spy is calm because he serves the crown prince. Veladi, Duke Theodore's daughter, is not as simple as she seems and should not be underestimated. The crown prince does not fully trust the information received, considering Veladi an ordinary daughter of aristocrats. The spy decides to lie low for a while, glad that his identity has not yet been revealed. He leaves the estate in a hurry, trying not to attract attention. One of the maids watches what is happening with suspicion, not missing a single detail. In a luxurious room, a maid reports to the lady about the traces of erasing magic found and the restored papers, and the lady asks if this is the only evidence. The lady inquires about the observer's reactions, and the maid explains that since they took the oath to House Elton, they have carried out orders impeccably. The lady praises the maid for her excellent work and lets her go, promising to handle the rest herself. The lady reflects on how quickly the maid was able to obtain evidence and suggests that the spy was confident that the evidence would be completely destroyed. She comes to the conclusion that if everything were so simple, then the phrase about the Elton house always finding traitors would never have existed. At this time, an order is spreading throughout the estate that there is a traitor among the servants, and if anyone appears suspicious, evidence must be collected immediately. The narrator had a suspect, but she did not reveal the names, seeing the events as an opportunity to test the abilities of those around her. Thanks to Stia's efforts, the evidence was obtained in the shortest possible time. Each observer had his own unique specialization, as stated in the original. The narrator muses that Elton's house needs a strong blow for her father to feel it, as this would give her more freedom to maneuver. The father personally deals with any information that could harm the family. The real spy turned out to be the knight who always guarded his mother, who forgot about his duties and fell in love with his mistress. Despite his feelings, the knight skillfully hid them behind an outward calm. Even being part of a powerful family, they were unable to save her, and the knight could not hold back his tears. After Nisha's appearance, the knight swore allegiance to her, which looked especially suspicious. The original story didn't mention that he was a spy. He only emphasized how much Nessia resembled the late Duchess. Because of the narrator's plans, her father was forced to move north, and as a result, Nessia remained there rather than go to the capital. The girl, sitting at a table in a bright office, reflects on the information received and admits that everything sounds very plausible. She's overcome with a headache from what's happening because she didn't try to specifically change the course of events, but the changes in the plot clearly don't bode well. She understands that managing high-ranking people such as knights or vassals is much more difficult than managing simple servants. Reasoning that she must use all the resources available to her, she notes that the spy has an accomplice. One of the accomplices turns out to be Baron Rickon, her father's closest assistant who practically lived on the estate. The other two accomplices come from the Brooks family and the Demi family. Baron Demi's second son, Ect Demi, greedily counts a mountain of gold coins. A crucial episode unfolds when the grown-up Nessia exposes his theft. A woman watches what is happening from the window, noting that despite the changes in time, the man has remained the same. To lure the thief into a trap, the narrator deliberately weakens control over the estate's budget. Act Demi asks Lady Velmati with a smile about the renovation of the extension to the estate. Lady Velmati confirms that the renovation is almost complete, and her interlocutor asks whether the furniture has been chosen yet. The man proudly says that he used to do business in the capital and has useful connections in the furniture business. The woman notes with a smile that this is the kind of approach that can truly spark interest, and says that it came just in time. She offers him to act as an intermediary in a deal with a furniture company, which surprises her interlocutor. The man admits that he wanted to complete the renovation in the spring but was too busy. He enthusiastically promises to do everything he can to help Lady Velmati, rejoicing at the fortunate coincidence. The woman internally notes that she gave him the opportunity to freely appropriate money and demands that he do it well. Recently, they smiled sweetly at each other, hiding their true intentions. She finally gets her hands on the book of records for work with furniture in the extension. While carefully studying the documents on the table, she notices a strange final amount. To her surprise, only 15,000 gold pieces were paid. She realizes with annoyance that Ekdemi turned out to be a coward and did not take advantage of the opportunity given to him. In the end, both participants in the conspiracy look like fools who tried to destroy Elton's house. She recalls that in the original story, Ekdemi had been embezzling huge amounts of money over 4 years, so she didn't expect him to commit a major theft right away. Despite the fact that she has created all the conditions for a major theft, she is surprised by his indecision. She reflects that without risk, it is impossible to achieve success, and the amount stolen is too small to make a difference. A maid enters the room, responding to her call. Lady Velmati asks Stia to call Jeffrin immediately. A mysterious man with blue hair and a slight smile appears in the shadows. A man in a dark cloak with a sly smile carefully lifts his hood, preparing to begin a secret operation under the cover of night. In a dark tavern, people are sitting at tables, someone is laughing, and in the center appears a man in a black cloak attracting attention. The bartender cautiously asks the stranger for the password, clutching a mug and a rag in his hands. On the street, a man in a raincoat and a mustache calmly utters a phrase about good weather, hiding his true intentions. The bartender looks thoughtfully at the object in his hands, pondering what he has heard. The man with the mustache remembers Lady Velmati's words, which serve as a clue to him. In a luxurious room, the lady explains that after handing over a special key, you need to give a password to enter the vault. The bartender suspiciously asks the guest whether the weather is really nice today, and silently notes that the other person doesn't see the difference. A man in a trench coat and a mustache speaks cryptically about sunlight on leaves, and the bartender reacts thoughtfully. The bartender invites the guest to follow him, reflecting on the fact that he did not know the password but was able to guess it. At the massive door, the bartender asks if the guest can get down on his own and receives a confident answer. A man in a cloak carefully descends a stone staircase in the semi-darkness. Downstairs, he is met by an elegant man with a group of people, welcoming the guest after a long separation. The men shake hands, and one of them, smiling, announces that he has come to deliver something special today. The clerk eagerly asks what special thing will be handed over. Looking at the box, the employee immediately understands that he has a very valuable item in front of him and offers to conduct an appraisal. Upon closer inspection of the box's contents, the employee is surprised and learns something important. The man with the mustache confidently reminds him that his method of getting money is well known, and the employee sheepishly agrees. An inner voice notices that everyone who uses the Mercenary Guild's personal storage is essentially the same, and coins and bills flicker in the darkness. Coins and jewels glitter in the darkness, and the Mercenary Guild is not interested in their origin, and the man with the mustache looks on with a sly smile. The clerk, holding the box, asks in confusion how much money is needed for the transaction. The man with the mustache confidently names the sum 10 million. The employee, shocked, repeats the amount, not believing what he heard, and doubts the possibility of such a deal. The man with the mustache confirms with a smile that this is a record sum and assures that he knows everything. The truth comes out, these jewels were bought at auction by the Duke of Elton specifically for the Duchess. The employee admits that he has seen a lot of jewelry over the years of working with the pawn shop, but this is the first time he has encountered such a high-quality set. The man with the mustache insists that even if he can't return the money, the bank will still make a profit, and wonders if everyone can afford such jewelry. An inner voice confirms that usually such jewels only end up in the hands of aristocrats. However, it is mentioned that both the thief who stole the jewelry and the one who bought it could end up on the scaffold. The clerk asks worriedly if this deal will cause any problems. The man with the mustache calmly remarks that otherwise he would have simply sold the jewelry to a dealer. The man in the suit reflects that the timid fellow would not have stolen such valuables without a carefully thought-out plan, and consoles himself with the thought that he can always pass himself off as an innocent victim. The clerk informs him that due to the high value of the deposit, he is setting a higher rate than usual and asks him to sign the documents, and the client with the suitcase agrees with a smile. A man enters the room with a suitcase, and the clerk remarks that he arrived just in time. A man with a mustache receives a loan agreement but asks to send it by mail in 3 days, promising to write the address. The second man wonders why the documents need to be sent by mail and explains that the gold is too heavy, so he will leave it in the vault for now. The employee confirms that the cargo is indeed very heavy and promises to keep it safe and sound until it is needed. The man with the mustache and his companion are happy that everything is going according to plan, as Lady Velati predicted. In the room, a man with dark hair worries that if Demi acts unusually, it might raise suspicion, but the woman in red responds confidently. The woman with long black hair believes that everyone will be so busy with the pearls that they won't notice anything else. A man in a green suit, leafing through papers, wonders whether he will be able to get at least some money. He is about to receive the visitor, straightening his tie and inviting him in. The maid brings a letter, apologizing, and says that this message is from Mr. Demi. The man with the mustache smiles and thanks for the item he brought, looking pleased and relaxed. The girl notes to herself that his smile is warm and simple, like that of the owner of a village bakery, and gets ready to leave. In the office, the man reflects that thanks to his father's innocent face, everyone lets down their guard, and he can easily appropriate the money. A woman with long dark hair recalls how she recently deceived a naive lady and came out on top. The man with the mustache thoughtfully reasons that perhaps this is why his money was stolen, and decides to continue extorting funds from that same lady. Suddenly, seeing the loan agreement, he is surprised because he has not borrowed money from the Mercenary Guild recently. The man is confused by the appearance of the loan agreement and tries to understand where it came from. He looks at the document with alarm, noticing that the signature at the bottom is suspiciously similar to his own and cannot believe what is happening. Panicked, he rushes to run down the corridor of a luxurious mansion. At this time, another young man looks into the room with surprise and alarm, amazed by what he sees. In a luxurious room, a woman gives a man orders to monitor Ectodemi's actions and immediately inform her as soon as he starts acting. The man, a little surprised, clarifies the reason for following Ectodemi, and the woman looks at him with a slight smile. The man becomes embarrassed and quickly denies any desire to argue, while the woman calmly says that she is just joking. The man watches Ectodemi from his hiding place, noting that his face is now distorted with horror, unlike his usual expression. Lady Velmati appears in the open air on horseback, attracting the attention of those around her. Lady Velmati approaches the man, who confirms that Ectodemi has indeed come out, his face contorted with fear, just as she predicted. Lady Velmati remarks with a slight smile that Ectodemi was shocked by the unexpected loan agreement and the amount. She orders her companion to bring Ectodemi with the help of some soldiers, and he respectfully agrees. Lady Velmati speaks kindly to her horse, promising to return soon and asking him not to go beyond the fence. She walks forward confidently, and Rover follows her, ready to carry out further instructions. Rover, a little embarrassed, asks Lady Velmati why she is keeping such a close eye on Mr. Demi. Lady Velmati calmly explains that Act Demi has embezzled part of the estate's funds, and Rover is shocked by this admission. Rover is surprised that suspicion of theft falls on Baron Demi's son, and looks at Lady Velmati with distrust. Lady Velmati calmly explains that both Rover's father and Baron Rickon had similar doubts, which makes the situation clear. Baron Demi, the head of the house, appears as an elegant and gentle man. Geoffrey, ever true to his role as an observer, never doubts Lady Velmati's actions. Lady Velmati walks confidently up to the table, and Rover watches her with excitement. She hands Rover the documents confirming the theft, and he is surprised to accept them as evidence. The young man reads the documents with amazement and indignation, shocked that anyone would dare to deceive Lady Velmati. He hurries to tell Lady Velmati what happened, and she, arms crossed, calmly clarifies the details, finding out whether Baron Demi is involved in this. In the memoirs, Baron Demi appears as an unhappy father, doomed to suffer because of his son's mistakes. A young man in a formal suit excitedly tells a girl important information, standing opposite her in a richly decorated room. The girl confidently refuses the offer with a slight smile, her gaze full of calm. They continue their conversation, the man holding an envelope in his hands, and the girl crossing her arms over her chest. A tense anticipation can be felt between them. A group of people enter the room, 2 of whom are tied up, and in front walks a man with blue hair and a confident smile. The man with blue hair and the girl discuss the details of the case. She explains who exactly accepted the jewelry and signed the agreement. The girl orders the suspect to be taken away and interrogated later, holding a folder with documents in her hands. Security guards lead the bound suspects, one of whom looks irritated and the other with alarm. One of the captives kneels down in front of a girl in white boots standing nearby. Fear appears in the prisoner's eyes as a black-gloved hand approaches him. The girl, with a serious expression on her face and a folder in her hands, looks at the prisoner, who has raised his gaze to her. The man's gaze is filled with rage and inner tension. A shadow falls on his face, emphasizing the growing resistance. The prisoner, bending to the floor, repents of his actions and begs for mercy. The girl notes to herself that the prisoner quickly realized what was happening and immediately admitted his guilt. The second suspect continues to resist, which makes him stand out from the others. The first captive, bending over to the floor, looks depressed and frightened. The girl demands that the prisoner tell her everything he saw, while her assistant watches what is happening. She clarifies the details of the case, asking about a large sum of money that someone asked to borrow, and the prisoner is confused. The girl orders the gag to be removed from the second suspect so that he can be interrogated personally. A soldier removes the gag from a captured man's mouth, preparing him for interrogation. The man with the mustache, finally free from the gag, looks forward with surprise and indignation. He, kneeling in front of the girl, loudly expresses indignation and demands respect for his person. The man sarcastically reproaches the girl for her careless attitude towards aristocrats, hinting at her youth and inexperience. The girl abruptly and without hesitation hits the man in the face, interrupting his speech. She looks at what is happening with cold determination and inner strength. 3 men enter the room, one of whom is anxiously holding a folder of evidence. The girl holds the man's face forcefully, forcing him to lower his head to the wall. The man looks through the girl's fingers in panic, realizing the seriousness of the situation. The girl calmly reports that she found evidence of theft in his desk. The man's eyes fill with horror as he realizes he has been exposed. He, trembling with fear, begins to justify himself to the girl, kneeling. A man in tears begs for forgiveness, his face distorted with fear and despair. The girl confidently leads the captive through the luxurious hall, holding him by the shoulder. She turns to the other prisoner, who is accompanied by a guard, and watches closely what is happening. The girl, without letting go of the culprit, turns to the man in dress uniform, asking whether it is worth finishing all the work today. The blue-haired man, smiling slightly, calmly agrees with her decision. The officers anxiously warn the girl that she could get hurt while watching her decisive actions. In a luxurious hall, a woman in a white suit confidently holds a man by the collar, while 2 guards watch closely. The man in the green jacket is scared. The woman's hand is tightly gripping his neck, and he is clearly nervous. Accompanied by guards and other characters, the woman leads the bent man forward, demonstrating her authority. The woman resolutely drags the man along with her, and a man with folders walks next to her, observing the situation. In a spacious office, a woman leads a man to an elderly gentleman with a cane, who jumps up from his chair in surprise. The man in green suddenly breaks free and falls to the floor, his face expressing despair and confusion. In the library, two men are confusedly supporting a third man, who is kneeling with a frightened face. A woman with a cold gaze warns those around her to stay away from the suspect. A man with gray hair and a mustache, together with his frightened companion, watch what is happening warily. A woman in a white suit and a man with folders discuss the situation as they pass by. The elderly man in glasses is stunned and shocked by what he sees. Two men in a library exchange documents and boxes, discussing their next steps. The man in green desperately waves the document, trying to justify himself to those around him. He is panicked and looks at the crowd with concern, his hands still tied. From above, a man is seen on his knees begging for mercy, while others watch him with disbelief. A woman with a cold gaze confidently declares her involvement in what is happening. A man with a mustache, full of despair, tries to explain something, hoping for understanding. A woman in white stands with her arms crossed, and a guard nearby watches the events unfold. Two guards tightly bind a man in a green jacket, gagging him and preventing him from resisting. In the office, everyone present watches the prisoner, who has dropped to his knees and looks depressed. The man with the bandage over his mouth looks away, hoping that he still has a chance to prove his innocence. A woman in white with a cold expression confidently declares that the thief's words should not be trusted. She stands with her arms crossed in front of another tied-up man who looks at her with alarm. The man in the black suit, despite his fear, confirms that he has drawn up a contract for a large loan secured by pearls. The woman, with a cold expression on her face, confidently exposes the attempt at counterfeiting, her gaze full of determination. The man in the black suit begins to justify himself, but his words sound unconvincing and arouse suspicion. The two witnesses in the library are shocked by what they heard, their faces expressing surprise and alarm. The woman calmly raises her hand, preparing to reveal an important detail, her confidence leaving no doubt. She addresses those present, and the man on his knees desperately tries to prove something, but the situation is getting out of his control. A woman in a formal outfit calmly asks the last question, inquiring about the identity of the person who exchanged the pearls for money. The man in the black suit looks at the ring with concern, realizing that as long as he believes he is right, it will not manifest itself. The man in green, bound and gagged, is angry and tries to say something, but his words go unheard. The woman with a cold gaze carefully observes what is happening, not missing a single detail. The guard leads the man in black out of the room, and he lowers his head, realizing his defeat. The man in green watches the people leaving with despair. His attempts to convey something remain unanswered. The woman in white, full of determination, is ready to complete what she has started. A man in a green suit kneels in front of a woman in white, his face filled with fear and despair, his mouth tightly gagged. There is a cold determination in her gaze. She remembers how he used to look down on her, and now he looks pathetic. The woman addresses the older man as Baron, her voice confident and commanding. The Baron and his companion were astonished by what was happening, their faces frozen in surprise and alarm. The man explains that the ring is used only in the most extreme cases, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation. The woman listens attentively. Her face remains calm, but her eyes show firmness and readiness for further action. A man in a green suit, bound and gagged, trembles with fear as he kneels against the wall. The woman with scarlet eyes looks at him sternly and confidently, not hiding her determination. The older man with gray hair looks down, admitting his short-sightedness. The woman and her companion walk down the corridor, and ahead of them lies an important connection with the north. She thinks with hope that her father will take the call, and a slight worry appears in her gaze. A young man with a serious face appears on the screen, ready for an important conversation. The girl, with a thoughtful look, notes that it is difficult for the man to take care of Nessia, which is reflected on his face. In the office, a man watches anxiously through a magic screen, while a girl confidently gives orders. The guards bring Baron Demi's second son, bound and frightened, into the interrogation room. A girl in a white suit reflects on the fact that investigating the affairs of aristocrats requires the permission of the head of the house, for fear of destroying evidence. The young man calmly confirms that Mr. Demi has been chosen to help manage the estate. The girl, with a cold expression on her face, notes that children do not always follow the path of their parents, reflecting on the fairness of the accusation. In a tense room, a girl in a formal suit points to a man kneeling and gagged, noting his aristocratic background, adding that he even laughed at her. In the semi-darkness, a man with a cold gaze and folded hands reflects on unacceptable behavior. A terrified aristocrat, bound and gagged, trembles as he is accused of mocking the only lady of the empire's ducal family. The girl with red eyes is surprised by the man's reaction, thinking about his anger, even if he is indifferent to her. Against a backdrop of flowers, a man tenderly holds a little girl with a teddy bear in his arms, reflecting on his guilt towards her and not towards another. The girl, with a slight smile, decides to take advantage of her father's feelings of guilt, if he really feels it. The man on the screen orders someone to be sent to an underground prison immediately, while the girl calmly apologizes. The girl confidently states that the insult was directed at her and insists on her right to choose her own punishment. She turns to the two men in the library and announces that she will now personally maintain order. The man, with a wary expression on his face, tries to understand the meaning of her words. The girl stands against a backdrop of golden roses, radiating determination and inner strength. She confidently says that she is perfect for this job, looking at the man through the magic screen. The girl, with a confident smile, talks about what is happening in the estate, standing against the backdrop of bookshelves. A man with a serious look asks his father if he knows who this man was. The man, clenching his fist, reacts tensely to what he heard, his face expressing determination. The girl calmly explains that she is talking about knights. The man admits that he has no right to punish high-ranking officials such as knights or priests. The girl confirms her position with dignity and determination, without hiding her intentions. The man with a serious face allows the girl to do as she pleases. The two men enthusiastically express their excitement about the prospect of working with Chief Welody. The man ponders thoughtfully whether what is happening is connected to a feeling of guilt. The girl confidently decides to use her father's influence and announce her intentions to her vassals. She smiles sincerely, expressing gratitude for the trust shown. The man quietly repeats the name Velody, lost in his thoughts. The man reacts sharply in fear upon recognizing the familiar name, his eyes wide in surprise. Two men are confused about just hearing a child's voice in the room. The girl, having collected her thoughts, resolutely orders the vassals to be summoned immediately. The men walk down the hallway, contemplating their role as witnesses to the appointment of the temporary head of the house. The girl looks at the kneeling men with confidence, feeling that this is exactly what she was born for. In a spacious office, a man at the table greets a small guest who came because of the loud sounds. A little girl with shining eyes happily tells how she insisted on sleeping alone. The man carefully holds the girl in his arms, listening attentively to her words. In the corridor, illuminated by soft light, a man walks, holding his daughter tightly to him. The girl confirms her name, Velmati Elton, with a smile. The man recalls his first meeting with Nessia with a slight smile. A scene appears in the memories where a little girl sits on the lap of a mysterious creature with long ears and a calm gaze. A man in a fur robe looks anxiously at a girl he holds in his arms in a winter landscape. The silver-haired girl and her mother stand together, evoking the image of little Velody in the hero's mind. The girl's beaming smile expresses the joy that food tastes better when she's with a loved one. A girl with red eyes is sad that her father cannot eat with her because of an important meeting. The little heroine is happy, holding a gift in her hands and glad that someone spent the morning with her. On her birthday, the girl hopefully asks her father to come home early. A man, shrouded in cold light, stands in the darkness, lost in his thoughts. His gaze becomes thoughtful as he reflects on what he couldn't do for his daughter and why he was glad of her determination. The girl hugs the man tightly around the neck, and he realizes that he usually does not show such feelings. Her eyes reflect admiration for Velody, whom she considers incredibly strong. Velody appears confident and radiant, as if surrounded by a halo of colors and light. Against the backdrop of a winter forest, a mysterious woman with long ears explains to the girl that everything is happening thanks to Seon. The girl with silver hair and bright blue eyes looks at her with a slight smile, her gaze filled with anticipation. An elderly man wearing glasses and a formal suit holds a scroll in his hands, preparing to make an important announcement. People gathered at the table, one of them is surprised, and a woman with a ribbon in her hair suggests that something unusual happened in the north. The man with the mustache looks worried, thinking about the place where the heroine is sitting. A dark-haired woman with a serious expression sits by the window, her arms crossed over her chest. A man stands next to a woman with a document in his hand, preparing to announce the decision to everyone present. In the hall, at a long table, everyone present reacts to the unexpected news in amazement and confusion. The two men jump up in indignation and alarm, not hiding their emotions. Two other meeting participants, one of whom is smiling, discuss the news of the appointment of an interim head of the house. The woman with long dark hair looks on with cold determination, knowing that protests will only bring fatigue. A man with a letter in his hand confirms that an official appointment has already been received from the head of the house. The young man with golden hair tries to explain, but his words sound like an excuse. A girl with a determined look clenches her fist on the table, preparing for an important conversation. She turns to the man, who stands up from his seat in agitation, but her face remains calm. The girl looks forward confidently, reminding those gathered of their previous refusal to accept her. A man with a mustache, worried and confused, tries to object. The entire room freezes in tense silence. All eyes are directed at the girl. She folds her arms, her gaze becomes cold and unwavering, and a gloomy atmosphere thickens around her. At the pier, workers are hastily unloading sacks from a large ship, and bustle fills the air. The man with the mustache and the tuxedo looks shocked and confused, not knowing what to say. A girl with a cold expression calmly declares the uselessness of rebellious vassals and suggests that they become independent. The man is confused, trying to find the words, his face expressing uncertainty. The girl watches the events with restraint, thinking about the consequences of her actions and how, without support, their economy will collapse. The man with the mustache, nervously, recalls the family that has remained faithful for a long time. A girl with a proud and cold look sits at the head of the table, radiating confidence and strength. She speaks calmly, making it clear that no one will dare to oppose her. The men at the table looked at each other awkwardly, unable to find the courage to object. Her eyes reflect contempt for those who are not worthy of even trying to argue, and a determination to never leave the ducal house. She stands up from the table, declaring the meeting over, and everyone present watches her actions closely. One of the men suggests that everyone speak before leaving, and a tense silence falls over the room again. The three men exchange glances in tense silence, sweat and worry visible on their faces. A man with a mustache, bowing his head and placing his hand on his chest, expresses respect and readiness to serve. He addresses the girl in blue, promising devotion and loyalty, and she watches him with cold calm. The rest of the assembly members support his words with smiles, assuring him of their loyalty and joy at the appointment. The girl smiles reservedly, agreeing to maintain the previous relationship if the arrogance does not repeat itself. The men exchange glances and laugh, recognizing the art of communication and diplomacy in this room. The girl looks thoughtfully at her interlocutor, pondering what to do, and notes the decency of Baron Demy despite his son's reputation. A slight smile appears on her face as she finds the words she heard amusing. An elderly man with a beard admits that he can only give advice, citing his age and experience. Meanwhile, other men discuss how the northern lands are too poor to satisfy the greed of the magic tower. One of them ends up on the lands of Baron Demy, located near the east, which becomes an important circumstance. The old man explains that he gave his advice out of concern and turns to the girl, asking her opinion. The older man thanks Lady Velmati for her understanding, and she smiles reservedly in response. The young man anxiously reports the arrival of Baron Demy, as predicted. The blonde man, surprised, asks if Baron Demy has really arrived yet, and adds that he refused to stay. Lady Velmati and her companion walk down the corridor, discussing how saving their son is more important than any meeting. She admits with a slight smile that she is capable of showing leniency, albeit with reservations. Baron Demy reacts to what is happening in confusion and fear, his face expressing alarm. Baron Demy, falling to his knees, begs for mercy with despair and tears in his eyes. Lady Velmati invites the Baron to sit down and discuss everything calmly, and he quickly agrees. She carefully studies the letter, noting the particular importance of the last point. With a slight smile, Lady Velmati announces that she is changing the punishment in recognition of the Baron's sincerity. The Baron reads the decision and learns that he is prohibited from leaving Demy's territory. Lady Velmati asks about the objections, and the Baron, not daring to contradict, agrees with her decision. Baron Demy looks at Lady Velmati with relief and gratitude, his eyes shining with tears. Lady Velmati smiles softly, noting that her decision is only an average punishment for those who have committed the crime. In her mind, she recalls that she had initially considered a much harsher punishment, but was willing to soften it for the sake of profit. She admits that she had indicated a severe punishment from the very beginning, although she did not expect the Baron to agree to the conditions so easily. Lady Velmati reasons that if the Baron were to share the rights with someone other than her house, it could give rise to unpleasant rumors. She is confident that for those who believe the rumors, the details do not matter, but it is still worth sharing responsibility. The man looks at his interlocutor with gratitude and relief, expressing his appreciation to Lady Velmati. The woman smiles reservedly, noting that gratitude is not required since the punishment was only moderate. Two men suddenly enter the room, and one of them surprises the person present. The men meet at the door. One of them is clearly worried, and is in a hurry to explain something to the other. The woman smiles reservedly, watching the situation unfold and maintaining confidence. One of the men, trembling with fear, looks at the woman, but she remains unwavering and stern. The woman watches with a slight smile as one of the men, frightened and embarrassed, bows before her, while the other supports him by the shoulder. She notes with relief to herself that her second son understood her hint, and reflects on the fact that now only the spy remains in the dungeon. A boy enters the room, addressing the woman in surprise, and she greets him with restraint after a long separation. The boy with big blue eyes looks at his sister with slight excitement and confusion. The woman watches the boy closely, and he, looking down, feels insecure in her presence. The boy, still confused, tries to find the words to continue the conversation. He meets the woman's gaze, confusion and slight tension visible in his eyes. The woman, crossing her arms, asks the boy an unexpected question, causing him to be surprised. She continues, reminding him that the weight of the situation always fell on his shoulders. The boy, gathering his courage, decisively answers that everything is connected with his birth. The woman looks at him with a mysterious smile, watching his reaction. The boy is alarmed to realize that he is being named the heir of the Elton house, and this causes him internal tension. The woman looks thoughtfully to the side, pondering her next steps and what awaits them ahead. She admits that all her actions were dictated by the desire to protect her pride, and the boy watches her with excitement. A shadow of doubt appears in her gaze because she never aspired to become an heir. A man and a boy stand next to each other, both looking worried and lost in thought. Against a background of blooming flowers, an image of a girl wearing a crown and holding a scepter appears, symbolizing power and a new role. A luxurious carriage slowly moves through the city streets, in which the Empress, who dedicated her life to caring for the weak, greets the crowd. At this time, children study and women work. Everyone is busy with their own business, finding joy in simple chores. A man and a woman stand on the scales of fate, their lives and actions hanging in a delicate balance. A man with a cold expression appears in the shadows. His intentions remain a mystery. A council gathers around a long table, where Empress Girika discusses her far-sighted goals with her entourage. In the corridors of power, men engage in tense conversation, as the forces the Empress faces prove far more dangerous than expected. A man with a pensive look remembers the past, surrounded by flowers and light. The Emperor intended to pass the title to Princess Hera, which caused tension between the heirs. At the winter ball, the Emperor paid special attention to a girl in a red dress, which changed her fate. Young officers greet the girl with respect in the training yard, recognizing her authority. One of the officers holds his hand on his chest with excitement and anxiety, not hiding his feelings. The girl, with cold calm, notes to herself that she knew about his intentions in advance. A man who values loyalty to his comrades above all else stands among his comrades, radiating confidence and strength. In the training yard, he approaches Lady Velmati, clearly wanting to discuss something important. In a tense conversation, he asks her a question, doubting the correctness of her decisions. His face expresses anxiety and persistence as he tries to get his point across. Lady Velmati remains calm as she thinks about the man she once knew. The man insists that some mistake has occurred, refusing to accept what is happening. The man hangs his head, feeling disappointment and inner pain. Another officer, with a slight smile and a gesture of respect, expresses his support. The man looks forward with determination, preparing for new challenges. The woman watches what is happening carefully, not hiding her anxiety. The man drops to one knee in amazement, stunned by the unexpected turn of events. On the training field, two officers clash in a tense duel, their swords crossing in a furious fight. The man drops to one knee before the woman, accepting her will without hesitation. His comrades watch what is happening with surprise, not hiding their excitement. From a distance, other officers discuss how Lady Velati hasn't even had her coming-of-age ceremony yet. A look of determination appears in her eyes. She sees this as a good opportunity. The woman confidently takes up the sword, preparing to meet real opponents. Those around her warn her of the danger, but she does not back down from her decision. A young man in a dress uniform with a slight look of concern on his face thanks for the welcome. In the training yard, two men with swords stand opposite each other, preparing for a duel, while other cadets watch them. The girl, with determination in her eyes, strikes with a swift blow of her sword, their blades clashing with sparks. The man is stunned and tense, his sword barely holding back the onslaught of his opponent. The girl continues her attack. Her movements are quick and confident, and her hair flutters in the air. The uniformed spectators are shocked by what they see, one of them holding his hand to his face in confusion. In the training yard, a girl and a man fight with swords, their blades clashing with force even without much effort. As the duel rages on, their swords cross, sparks fly, and the tension between the rivals mounts. The girl stands with her sword pointed downwards, and the man kneels before her, admitting defeat. Spectators are amazed to hear how she managed to defeat a strong opponent. The girl confidently holds the sword, and the man, sitting on the ground, looks at her with surprise and respect. The man turns to the winner with excitement and apology, acknowledging her superiority. A girl with a sword stands before a defeated enemy, warning that next time there will be no mercy. A number of cadets in black uniforms anxiously discuss how they will no longer consider this man a knight of their house. A cold determination appears on the girl's face. Her gaze becomes frighteningly serious. A man in dress uniform drops to one knee, admitting defeat. Several people kneel before the girl, and one of the observers cannot believe what is happening. A boy with blue eyes and a bow tie on his neck looks with anxiety and surprise, clasping his hands to his chest. A boy sits on the edge of a bed in a luxurious room, looking thoughtfully at the floor amidst the morning light and blue roses. A girl with a serious look and a decoration on her neck looks straight ahead, her face expressing determination. The boy rushes to the door in panic, his face and movements full of anxiety. He runs along the night corridor, thoughts flashing through his head that his position as heir has been revealed. In the training yard, a boy watches what is happening in surprise, standing among the other cadets. One of the senior cadets asks the boy about the reason for the meeting as more and more people gather around. In the training yard, two people clash in a duel, and a tense atmosphere fills the air with questions about what happened. Two anxious young men discuss what is happening, their faces expressing concern. One of them, with a frightened look, realizes that it is not just a matter of a repeat duel. The defeated knight finds himself on the ground, and the girl with the sword stands confidently above him. The young man watches in amazement, reflecting on how easily Sir Logan was defeated. Among the group of soldiers, the young man stands out for his confusion, realizing that there is something more important. The hero's eyes reflect surprise and internal protest. He does not agree with what is happening. A girl with a sword in her hand stands against the blue sky. Despite all his denials, she remains unwavering. She appears in full dress, with a sword and a medal, as if she were the embodiment of strength and determination. On the training field, a girl with a sword kneels in front of a man. People gather around. A boy approaches her, asking in surprise what she is doing here. The boy excitedly addresses the girl, calling her sister, but she remains silent, lost in thought. The girl, with a cold expression on her face, says that she did not expect such behavior and demands that he behave with dignity. She leaves, and the boy looks after her with anxiety and surprise. In the corridor, a girl with books in her hands quickly passes by, and a boy watches her. The boy, noticing her gaze, immediately turns away and walks away. He always stubbornly avoided her gaze, even when they came face to face. The girl walks down the corridor in a long dress, her steps full of determination and inner strength. A girl in a long dress enters a spacious office where books and papers are scattered everywhere. She is finally sitting at the table in her father's office, discussing something important with a man in glasses. A girl with a slight smile chooses a book from a shelf in the library. Behind a bookshelf, she discovers a hidden passage leading down the stairs. She cautiously enters a mysterious room filled with antique furniture and many bottles. Against the backdrop of a tense story, two young men in dress uniform and a girl in glasses appear, symbolizing a hidden threat in the event of betrayal. In a dark atmosphere, a young man finds himself entangled in a mysterious red thread, while the voiceover suggests that each guard has his own story. The girl holds the red stone in her hand with cold calm, reflecting on its insignificance. A man in dress uniform watches what is happening with surprise and alarm. The girl examines the stone she found and comes to the conclusion that it is a garnet. She hands the stone to the man, and a tense conversation about loyalty and service ensues between them. A mysterious and confident smile appears on her face among the roses and shadows. The man looks at the woman with surprise and alarm as she presses a shining stone to his hand. He drops to one knee before her, acknowledging her power and strength. The stone begins to glow on his hand, symbolizing a new union and submission. The man, still confused, bows before her, accepting his new role. In the library, he kneels and she holds the sword over him, completing the ritual of fealty. The man, with excitement and determination, promises to dedicate his whole life to her. A mysterious smile appears on the girl's face as she confidently asserts her power. She remains alone in the office, immersed in work at a large table. At this time, the boy panics and indignantly bursts into the room. He, with despair and jealousy, accuses the girl of choosing the knight as her assistant. The boy continues to insist on his own, not hiding his emotions. The girl calmly and with a slight smile watches his reaction, not rushing to answer. The girl smiles sincerely, placing her hand on her chest as if remembering something warm. She leans on her hand with slight irony, watching her interlocutor. In a spacious library, a girl quietly reads at a table, and a boy stands opposite, waiting for an answer. The boy listens to her words with surprise and slight sadness, remembering the past. In her memories, she feels the same alienation he felt, watching his family from afar. The girl answers the boy with reproach and pain in her voice, not hiding her emotions. The boy sadly and remorsefully admits his mistakes to his sister, his eyes full of regret. The girl calmly and a little tiredly asks if she was an obstacle on his way to the inheritance. The boy, lowering his head, admits that his irritation and anger were directed at her. She listens to his confession, her gaze becomes softer, and silence reigns in the room. The boy holds back tears, his face expressing pain and remorse. The girl, surrounded by purple roses, is once again left alone with her thoughts on the letter. In a spacious library, a girl in a blue dress confidently talks to two men in military uniform, illuminated by soft light. A girl with a serious look gives instructions to a maid with blue hair and glasses to find out what a certain person was doing in the Megala Empire. Against a backdrop of luxurious white roses, a young man with red hair and a mysterious smile appears. An elegant carriage drawn by a pair of horses quickly moves along the sunny pavement. The girl gets out of the carriage and meets a group of people, among whom an elderly man stands out, while the rest watch what is happening. A girl in an elegant blue dress walks in front of everyone, followed by men in formal suits, and she looks confident and determined. In a spacious, high-ceilinged hall, the day of the minor chapters meeting begins, and the participants take their seats. The girl in the blue dress occupies the chair of honor, as the acting head could have been sent to this meeting. A young man with red hair sits on the throne, perceiving this as a rehearsal for a meeting of the great leaders. The girl addresses the fair-haired man, confirming his presence at the meeting in place of another. The purple-haired man notes with surprise that he didn't expect to see a girl at this meeting. The man with purple hair smiles. His mood is clearly elevated. A girl with a confident smile reflects on the rules of hierarchy in noble society. A blonde in a lilac dress stands against a backdrop of golden roses and stars, looking thoughtful and calm. The girl in the blue outfit with a serious look emphasizes her status as the temporary leader of the North. A man with long purple hair watches the scene with a slight smile. Two men on the podium are discussing how it is natural to be confused at a first meeting, and one of them is laughing. An elderly man with gray hair and glasses looks surprised and worried. The girl, with a wary look, notices that Casper is grinning. Casper, with a mysterious smile and gesture, creates tension in the room. Despite what is happening, the vassals of the North remain silent and look worried. The girl notes that winter in the capital is almost over, and her words ring out in the silence. She stands with a cold expression on her face, ready for further conversation. The vassals of the North continue to silently observe the developments without interfering. A man in a formal suit expresses his point of view with excitement and determination, pointing his finger. An argument breaks out in the room. One of the men speaks anxiously about boundaries, and the others look confused. The vassals, feeling threatened with demotion, desperately support the speaker, while a woman sits calmly on the throne. The man with the mustache, turning to the others, continues speaking, and the two interlocutors listen to him attentively. One of the interlocutors, with restraint and concern, acknowledges that their words may have offended someone and is ready to apologize. A woman with a serious expression watches what is happening and thinks that the meeting of the heads is some kind of social event. A man with long purple hair and a calm smile looks forward, radiating confidence. Two men in formal suits are indignantly discussing something, their faces full of discontent. Two more men, one clearly worried and the other with his arms crossed, look anxiously in the same direction, discussing North's strange behavior. The man with golden hair and his companion react with irritation to what is happening, one of them pointing a finger. The three men in the room are surprised and outraged, and the purple-haired man, sitting separately, looks puzzled. The purple-haired man looks warily towards where the blonde man sits, smiling and looking smug. The purple-haired man looks depressed and confused. A bead of sweat appears on his face. There are three participants at the round table, and one of them calmly notes the predictability of what is happening. A woman with long dark hair and red eyes smiles with a slight mockery. The purple-haired man answers her, a calm smile crossing his face. They continue their conversation, and the woman looks at her interlocutor with restraint, emphasizing the importance of self-control. The woman with dark hair and a radiant smile looks confident and pleased with herself. The woman with dark hair and glowing red eyes looks stern and determined, her face expressing indignation. Her gaze becomes even more stern. She internally vows not to forgive those who neglect her. The three men sitting on the bench are visibly nervous and try to be careful in their words. The purple-haired man looks at the woman tensely while she sits calmly and confidently opposite him. The purple-haired man exclaims, not hiding his indignation and surprise. The dark-haired woman laughs, her mood suddenly changing to light and carefree. In a spacious room at a round table, a woman calmly explains that she allowed herself a little joke. The purple-haired man was surprised and stunned by her words. The blonde man in the elegant suit laughs, genuinely enjoying what is happening. The woman thanks her, but the purple-haired man remains silent, not knowing how to react. The purple-haired man, having regained his composure, talks about the need to be prepared for the consequences of one's actions. The judges watch the proceedings, and the woman with dark hair looks ahead confidently and calmly. A woman with long dark hair, her arms crossed, admits she's a little worried about what's happening. The men in the audience react differently. One of them smilingly says that he doesn't feel any anxiety. A young man with pink hair enters the room, accompanied by several men, and he looks confident. A young man with pink hair introduces himself, his face expressing calm and dignity. Against a backdrop of flowers and radiance, he appears next to a girl wearing a crown and a luxurious outfit, creating an atmosphere of solemnity. A man with red hair in a dress uniform appears in the hall, his gaze full of determination. The woman with red eyes suddenly becomes alert, noticing someone behind the man who entered. A young man with red hair appears in the hall, his face lit up by a bright and sincere smile.